Prologue. Paris, France. What the hell was she doing here? It was one thing to kiss the man, to go on a couple of dates with him, but this was something entirely different. Veronica Croft stared down at the street below, and the question kept running through her head. She was alone in a foreign city with Stephen Reeser, the pit bull of the neuroworld. He was stunningly handsome, far out of her league, sexy as hell, and scary. People at Kronberg Pharma, where they worked, were scared of Stephen, and she was worried it wasn't simply because he could fire them. There were rumors about the man who was currently taking a shower after the short plane trip from Munich to Paris. Rumors that frightened her. Rumors that should have had her running away, not going on holiday with him. Vacation. That's what they called it in the States. Had she been away from home so long she sounded European? Working alongside Brits and Germans and Swedes and French had taught her a lot, had forced her outside her South Texas roots. The girl she'd been mere years ago wouldn't have found the courage to leave the safety of her suburban home, much less take a year to work for one of the most innovative companies in the world. The girl she'd been had also known that when a moth touched the flame, her wings burned away. How do you like the place? The deep voice sent a shiver down her spine that didn't have anything to do with fear. His voice fascinated her, because she could tell so much about his mood from it. When it went deep and had a rough edge to it, he was angry. When he was bored, he sounded pretentious and intellectual. He sounded like that a lot. Like the world wasn't quite enough for him, and neither was the person he was talking to. And then there was that voice he seemed to only use on her, the one that made her heart melt. Don't believe what they say, Ronnie. I'm not who they say I am. It's all for show. He'd whispered those words in her ear a month ago, after he'd pretty much flayed the doctor who'd cornered her at a party. He'd been drunk and gotten handsy, and thanks to Stephen Reeser, he was no longer employed. It had been the first sign that Stephen might not be who he seemed to be, and that one incident had brought about the first crack in her barely there armor. Her mom always said she was too open. She trusted too fast, and it burned her. She was afraid she was going to get burned again, and she couldn't seem to help herself. She turned away from the scene outside, where she could see the green of a park and tourists and locals walking by. The smell of espresso wafted up from the cafe at the bottom of the building. It's beautiful. This is a nice neighborhood. This neighborhood is known as the First Arrondissement, he explained. One of the oldest, wealthiest neighborhoods in Paris. All the best shopping is here, and the Louvre is close by. Yes, she'd already figured that out. It was part of the mystery that surrounded him. His place in Munich was fairly utilitarian. She had been surprised by how luxurious this space was. It's an amazing apartment, but it makes me wonder how you afford it. Most doctors your age are still struggling to pay off medical school. Yeah, there were rumors about that, too. She didn't believe them. He had a rough exterior, but he wasn't some kind of criminal. He could be incredibly sweet when he wanted to be. And God, he was beautiful. She forced herself to stay cool and not to drool at the man. He'd come in dressed in nothing but a pair of jeans that clung to his hips. They showed off the fact that Stephen liked to work out. A lot. She was around doctors all the time. One would think men and women in the medical profession would be in tip-top shape. One would be wrong. But not about Stephen. He was 6'2", with a lean frame and broad shoulders. And abs. Lots of sculpted abs. Maybe she could handle the to-die-for body, but his face was damn near perfect, too. It was the face of an angel. It didn't fit the man's reputation at all. He grinned, a light expression she rarely saw. It's not exactly mine, but that's another story. It belongs to a guy I sort of worked with. While I'm here in Europe, I'm free to come and go as I please. He took a step toward her, his golden brown hair slick from the shower. But I'm probably going back to the States soon. That surprised her. I thought you were riding MacDonald's coattails all the way to the top. A startled expression crossed his face, and for a second she could have sworn she'd hurt him. His lips curled up then, and that split second of openness was gone, replaced with that gorgeous mask of his. Hey, doctors have been doing it for decades. Centuries, really. We all climb on the backs of the great ones, and then call ourselves giants. But no, I've got plans that don't include MacDonald. Or Europe. I want a bunch of American food and an elevator that doesn't make me feel like I'm some kind of ogre. She laughed at that. The lifts here could make a person feel like they didn't fit. I miss crisp bacon. The pancakes at the cafeteria are pretty good, but why can't they actually cook the bacon? And the Brits? Who the hell eats baked beans for breakfast? Stephen finished her thought. And tomatoes. I kind of want a Pop-Tart. Me too, she said with a grin. And I swore them off a long time ago. I pretty much ate them exclusively during my undergrad years. Pop-Tarts and ramen noodles. And when I had some cash, I would buy the good mac and cheese, he added, that grin still lighting up the room. Sometimes they connected. And that was what kept her flying so close to the flame. That, and the fact that she was almost certain he was involved in something criminal. Not that he was behind it, but that he was going to get caught up in it. Something was going on at Kronberg. Maybe not at Kronberg as a whole, but definitely with Dr. Hope MacDonald's group. According to her sister, MacDonald and her father might be doing things they shouldn't. Katie was certain there was a story here, certain she could blow up the pharmaceutical industry. Ronnie didn't intend to become an undercover informant. Her sister was a brilliant writer and an excellent investigator, but she also tended to believe every kooky theory the internet put out in the world. The idea that a group of companies had formed a shadowy agency that ruled the globe was one of her older sister's favorites. But Ronnie had been worried about what was happening with Dr. MacDonald ever since Rebecca Walsh had left. Dr. Walsh had been one of the smartest, nicest people she'd worked for here, and the fact that she'd quit without notice felt wrong to Ronnie. None of which explained why she was standing here with the hottest, most potentially dangerous man she'd ever met. It didn't explain why she thought about him all the time, why he haunted her every fantasy. Yeah. They don't have as much processed food as we have in the States. It was a stupid thing to say, and she was feeling completely awkward. A long moment passed, and he turned to her, his eyes warm for a change. But then somehow they always seemed warm when he looked her way. Why did you agree to come to Paris with me, Veronica? There it was, the deep, rich tone that got her every time. She could give him some bullshit excuse, but she thought they were past that now. You know why? I know why I asked you to come with me. I don't know why you said yes. He stared at her for a moment as though he could see through her every mask. Are you afraid of me? If you're here because you think sleeping with me will protect your job, then I'm going to go get dressed and we'll have a long talk. I'm not threatening you in any way. I know you won't believe this, but I want to protect you. The crazy thing was, she did. He seemed to be two completely different people. There was the ruthless head of research and the man who softened when they were alone. The one who'd kissed her 3 nights before, like he was dying of thirst and she was a tall glass of water. No one in the world had ever made her feel the way this man had, and she hadn't been able to stop herself from exploring that. I'm not here because I'm afraid of you. If I was afraid of you, I would have said no. I would have made sure I was never alone with you. She'd had a few colleagues who she'd been wary of over the years. Somehow, despite his reputation, Stephen hadn't been one of them. I'm glad to hear that, because the last thing I want is for you to be afraid of me. I don't understand you, she admitted. I get that you have to be stern at work. Our business can be a little cutthroat. You have no idea, he said quietly, his smile going dim. At this level, it's beyond ruthless. But I don't have to always be at this level. When I was younger, do you know what I wanted to be? She shook her head. It already felt comfortable. This was how it went with him. She was anxious until they started talking, and she forgot who he was at work. I don't know. A marine biologist? Don't we all want to be that until we figure out there are sharks out there? An astute metaphor for our business, too. No, I always wanted to be a doctor. I wasn't the kid who played at being a fireman or police officer. My brother and his friends always played soldiers, and I was the medic. My granddad was a doctor. He died when I was a kid, but I remember watching him. I would hang out in the office. He was a GP for a small town. I wanted to be one too. She couldn't see it. He was so ambitious, it burned there in his eyes. Being a general practitioner required a patience he wasn't known for, and it had next to none of the acknowledgement he seemed to crave. Then why go into research? He stopped for a moment, and then shook his head. It doesn't matter now. What does matter is that we're here alone together. Veronica, I don't want you to be afraid of me. And I don't want to be friends. I kissed you the other night because I couldn't help myself, even though I know damn well I should. Why should you? This was another thing she didn't understand. She thought he wanted her. She could sometimes feel him watching her with the focus of a predator, but he'd stayed away until very recently. He seemed like a man who went after what he wanted. Because you think I'm an asshole. It's not exactly the best place to start a relationship. She couldn't deny it. He acted like an asshole most of the time, but she also thought there was something beyond his work persona. Is there more to you than the man I see at Kronberg? He moved closer to her, obviously pleased to be able to answer the question. Yes, a lot more. And I want to talk to you about it this weekend, but it has to wait. Can you trust me for one more day? I've got a meeting tomorrow morning. If that goes well, we're going to have a long talk. Everything changes if this meeting goes well. Was he leaving Kronberg? Somehow the idea that he was getting out made her way more comfortable with him. Are you interviewing? I can only say that I'm definitely looking to go home to the States, and soon, he said. I would like for you to think about going with me. He held up a hand. Again, no pressure at all. I can only promise you that I'll take care of you if you leave with me. I'll handle everything, including getting you out of Kronberg. My internship is only through the end of the year. She had another couple of months. She was already applying to hospitals back in the States. She enjoyed research, but she missed having patients, missed the connection that came from dealing with people. She needed to start her life. This year had proven what she didn't want. Unfortunately, it also proved what she did. Him. I can help you find a job. A good job. He shook his head as though clearing it. We can talk about this later. Now, I think I promised to show you around the Louvre. There's a nice cafe close. I think you'll like it. I don't know the city well, but I can show you around this neighborhood a bit. There was something about the way he changed the subject that made her suspicious. Stephen, is something wrong at Kronberg? Was her sister right? Why else would he leave a job that many people would kill to have? Back in the States, he couldn't come close to the salary Kronberg had to be paying him. He would make less than half as a GP, and likely work far harder. He moved in, taking her space and leaning over to whisper in her ear. "We can talk about that tomorrow, okay? I'll take care of everything, and that includes you. Trust me, Ronnie. I want to know one person in the whole world trusts me." Her hands had come up, touching his torso, and she couldn't help the way her whole body heated at how close he was to her. His skin was soft and warm. He hugged her to him, one arm around her waist and the other coming to cup the nape of her neck. As if she was precious, something to protect. "No matter what happens, this thing between us, it's real. Don't forget that," he whispered. "What I feel for you is real. It's the only real thing in the world right now." She should step back. She should wait until he'd told her exactly what he was planning to do, what was going on. But she didn't. She leaned into him, breathing in the scent of the soap he'd used, loving the way his skin felt against her own. Why him? Why did it have to be him? She asked the question even as she felt her heart rate tick up. Being close to him, alone with him, was causing a definite physical response. Her whole body reacted to him. Her brain no longer mattered. He was difficult and complex and right. He felt right to her. "This is very real, Stephen." He winced, but the expression was gone so quickly it might have been an illusion. "I want you badly. I feel like you're the only good thing that's happened to me in years and years. I know I should wait, but I can't. I wanted you with me when I finish this." "Finish?" "Transition," he corrected. "I'm going to transition out of my horrible boss phase and figure out who I am again. Let's call it that." She wasn't getting answers from him tonight. "You're a frustrating man." His head came up, and the sweetest smile crossed his face. This was why he was maddening. For every moment he was cold to a coworker, she got a private one where he was warm and made her feel safe. She'd never been the focal point of his bitter humor or the victim of his savage reactions. For some reason, the beast inside him had never swiped out at her. What if the rumors were about jealousy? He was young and on the fast track. That could be frustrating for some people. He had the ear of the most important people at the company. There were plenty of people who would love to be in his place. It suddenly didn't matter, because his lips were hovering right above hers, and everything that was feminine inside her responded to the wounded lion vibe he was giving off. "I won't be," he promised. "When this is over, I'll be the simplest man you've ever met. I'll only want to love you, Ronnie. I've decided you're the prize I get for everything I had to go through." Yes, all the alarm bells she should be listening to faded away. She was a prize. She was a silly girl from Galveston who had book smarts and not a bit of sense. She'd been a dreamer all her life, a romantic, and the idea that beauty could change the beast was still the bedrock of her fantasies. She was on the edge with this man, and the minute his lips touched hers, she knew she was in for a fall. She wound her arms around his waist and let him lead her. "I crave you," he said against her mouth. "I never thought I would find someone like you here. When I started this, I never fucking thought there would be more than the job." She let her hands move up the strong muscles of his back. She wanted to believe everything he was saying, wanted to shove aside all her doubts. Truly brilliant doctors could often act like assholes when they were working. It was when they were alone that mattered. "You have to be nicer at work." She said the words instinctively. If she was getting into this, she had to believe she could modify some of his behavior. Didn't lions get a little more tame when they took a mate? She held her breath because he'd once told her they didn't talk about work when they were alone. It was his rule. They could talk about anything else, but not work. Never Dr. MacDonald. Would she see that bad side of Stephen Reeser now? He chuckled, and his arms tightened. Promise. I promise you're going to see a whole new me soon. He smoothed her hair back and seemed to get serious. You're the only one who sees even the tiniest part of me, aren't you? You see some good in me. Oh, she'd found the part of Stephen that melted more than her panties. This was why she couldn't hold herself apart from him. She did see something no one else saw. Something that was only for her. Yes. He was a doctor trying to do good in the world. He was brilliant and young, and he likely thought he had to be ruthlessly tough to get anywhere in their business. What if he truly wanted to go back to the States and become a general practitioner? A sudden vision of them working and living together made the world seem happier than it had been before. I do, she said, staring into those sky-blue eyes of his. Sometimes they could be like ice, but they were warm when he looked her way. You've kept me sane. He kissed her again, plastering his body against hers. Tell me you want me as much as I want you. Tell me you came here so we can be together. So when we leave, we won't ever be apart again. It was everything she'd dreamed of hearing from him. I came because I couldn't stay away from you. It was nothing less than the truth. She couldn't logic her way out of how he made her feel, and she was sick of fighting it. If he left, she would go with him. She would bet on them. It was a gamble, and she didn't take many of those. This time, she would be all in. His fingers tangled in her hair, and he gently eased her head back, kissing his way down her neck. Her skin lit up, and she let go of any reason she'd had previously to not do this. Since the moment he'd asked her to go to Paris with him, she'd been nervous about where it would lead. He'd asked her to keep it secret, and she'd gone along because she hadn't wanted anyone to know about their relationship. She'd gotten good at ignoring him at work, only to meet up with him for a private dinner, or talk to him on the phone late into the night. I don't want this to be a secret anymore, she said. I want them to know why you're nice to me. I want to be able to have lunch with you. Every day, he swore as he kissed her ear, nipping at the lobe. When we're done here in Paris, I promise we won't have a single secret between us. It would be good to walk into work with him. If he got this new job of his, they wouldn't have more than a few weeks left at Kronberg, but she would be with him every step of the way. Even if they weren't in Europe, the medical world was a small place, and they could have to work with some of the doctors again. She could start to let people know he wasn't the monster they made him out to be. It'll be a fresh start. He looked down into her eyes, one side of his mouth tugging up in a heartbreaking grin. Baby, you have no idea. Now kiss me. Take me away from everything for a while. I only feel like myself when I'm with you. And she was finding herself with him. She was definitely finding her sensuality with him. Her every sense seemed heightened as he leaned over and swept her into his arms. He strode through the gorgeous apartment toward the bedroom. There were two, and he'd offered her the master. But she got the feeling they wouldn't be using the smaller one at all. He would be moving his duffel bag in before morning. I've wanted this from the moment I saw you, he said as he set her on her feet. His hands went to the hem of her shirt, and he dragged it over her head before taking her mouth again. The man knew how to kiss. His tongue surged in, sliding along hers, an invitation to dance. She couldn't refuse him. She wasn't sure if she would ever be able to refuse this man. certainly not when his hands were on her. She didn't protest when he expertly unhooked her bra and cool air hit her skin. He tossed it away, and his bare chest rubbed against hers. Her nipples peaked, and everywhere he touched got warm and sensitive. Late afternoon light streamed in through the gauzy curtains, softening everything it lit, including him. In this light he seemed younger than normal as he kissed her and led her to the bed. She let him take control. This was what had been missing in all her past encounters. There was no awkwardness, no hesitation here. There was only Stephen and what he wanted. It was easy because she did trust him. She made the decision, letting all her doubts fall away. This was the right place to be, and he was the right man for her. They would find their way. But all that mattered now was the fact that he was pushing at the waistband of her slacks, even as his tongue delved deep inside her mouth. She needed to be naked with him. All her inhibitions were gone, and only the desire to be with this man remained. Her clothes seemed to fall away, and then her back was on the bed, and he shoved his jeans off. She watched with dreamy eyes as his cock came into view. Like the rest of the man, it was magnificent. He stroked himself, his big hand moving up and down as he stared at her. This changes everything. We're together now. It was all she wanted. To get to truly know this man with all his complexities, having time with him that they didn't have to steal. This was the start of their lives together. Yes. He moved between her legs, covering her with his body. I can't wait. God, Ronnie, I need you so much. He didn't have to wait. She was ready for him. She wrapped her legs around him, need driving her. All that mattered was one more kiss, one more caress, more of him. She gasped as he thrust inside her. He filled her, and warmth suffused her body. It was a heat unlike anything she'd felt before. She squirmed to accommodate him. It had been a long time since she'd been so close to a man. He held himself still, dropping his forehead to hers. Are you all right? Am I going too fast? They'd been moving toward this moment since the day they'd met. He hadn't moved fast enough for her. I'm good. It's just been a while. I don't want to hurt you. He wouldn't. This man wouldn't hurt her. He was hers and she was his. She cupped his cheek, emotion welling inside her. You won't. Unless you stop. She could have sworn his eyes sheened with unshed tears. Only you would say that to me. One good thing. I found one good thing. He didn't explain it. Didn't need to, because she understood. This job had been hard, and now she'd found one good thing too. He settled in, and his hips moved, sparking pleasure through her. It had never felt like this before, and she rode the wave. She was so full of hope and life, full of him. He kissed her as he managed to hit the perfect place deep inside her, shoving her over the edge and into sheer sensation. His body shook as he found his own pleasure and seemed to lose all his strength. His body pressed hers into the mattress, but she didn't care. This part wasn't awkward either. This part was like the rest of it. Right. You won't regret this, baby, he whispered. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to be good for you. I'm going to be me again. And I swear I'll do everything I can to make you happy. It was all she could ask for. He shifted off her, but wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her against him. When is your interview? Their return flight wasn't until tomorrow evening. She wanted to do touristy stuff with him, especially if they were going back to the States soon. Interview? For the new job. Sex seemed to be an excellent way to distract him. He chuckled. Ah, yes, there will definitely be one of those. He kissed the nape of her neck, seeming to want to drown himself in affection. In the morning, early. I have to go out tonight to grab a few things I'll need, but it should all be over by tomorrow afternoon. And soon, I will get you crunchy bacon. I promise. He groaned and fell back. Shit. I didn't... Sweetheart, I might have lost control. She turned and rolled against him, settling her head on his chest. She knew exactly what he was freaking out about. She hadn't thought about protection either, but luckily she was prepared. I'm on the pill. It's all right. He hugged her again and settled back down. I promise I haven't had sex in a long time. Not since my last physical. Me either. She listened to the strong beat of his heart as she came down from the high of making love with him. That's what they'd done. She'd expected sex. She'd gone in knowing she would likely sleep with him. This had been so much more. This was everything. This might be the rest of her life. Ronnie. Yes. He smoothed back her hair. Thank you for trusting me. She let her leg drift over his, tangling them further. I have questions, but yes, I trust you. And I'll have answers. He kissed her forehead. But for now, I think I promised to take care of you. His hand cupped her breast, and she started to warm up again. She laid back and let him take the lead. It didn't matter, because they had all night long. They had the rest of their lives. Ronnie checked the clock again. 4:30. 5 minutes later than the last time she checked. She'd been doing this for the last 5 hours, and it was starting to drive her crazy. She checked her phone for what felt like the 100th time. It was on. The ringer was on. The phone was charged, and he hadn't called or returned her texts. Multiple texts. Increasingly panicked texts. They needed to head to the airport in less than 2 hours, and she had no sign of him. She wondered if she should start calling hospitals, but forced herself to breathe. It was okay. It was a job interview. They could take all day. A job interview that would take them to the States. So why was he interviewing in Paris? And why had he left at dawn? Even if his appointment had been at 8, he wouldn't have needed to leave so early. He'd kissed her and told her to get some more sleep, and then he'd walked away. Without his laptop or his tablet. They were sitting on the table. They were also password protected, as she'd learned when she'd gotten desperate enough to try to read his emails so she would know where his interview was supposed to take place. She stood in front of the big window overlooking the Tuileries garden. She'd spent the morning exploring the beautiful park, thinking about how nice it would be to walk around with Stephen's hand in hers. Where was he? He hadn't called or answered his phone. She'd taken the morning easy, but as the day turned to afternoon, a bit of panic had started to fill her. Had something happened? There was a knot in her stomach, a knot of worry that he'd somehow gotten hurt. Or she'd gotten played. Ronnie took a deep breath and banished the thought. She wasn't falling into that hole. He wouldn't have left his laptop behind if he hadn't meant to come back. He'd made love to her all night. He'd only left her briefly to grab pizza and wine, and he'd ordered her to stay naked. The minute he'd walked back in, he'd shucked his clothes, and they'd eaten and drank and talked until they'd made love again. He wasn't playing her. No man could make love like that and not mean it. He hadn't had to play her. She'd meant to go to bed with the man. She would have done it without all the promises. But the promises are what made it fun for him. A guy like that enjoys the game and you weren't playing it, so he found a way to make you. She sniffled as her inner voice turned distinctly dark. Why would a man like that walk away from a job with a major pharmaceutical company? From a team that's supposedly on the edge of some major accomplishments? That man, the youngest team lead in Kronberg history, that man wants to be a GP and marry a woman who barely qualified for the internship program? Who isn't close to his league looks-wise? You really thought that man would give it all up for you? Or she could be positive. He was stuck. The interview had gone well, and he'd been offered the job. The mystery job he hadn't wanted to talk about. Damn it. She stared out, trying to find some calm. But then she saw something that absolutely wrecked her. A woman was walking up the street, her high heels not holding her back at all. She was a woman who knew how to walk in those expensive things she could probably use as a weapon if she needed to. She didn't, since she had a big bodyguard with her. One Ronnie hadn't seen before. Dr. Hope MacDonald was walking down the street, and there was no question in Ronnie's mind where she was going. The big guy beside her had dark hair cut in a military style. He wore a suit that probably hid a gun. MacDonald was a U.S. senator's daughter, and she rarely went anywhere without some muscle. The knot in her gut twisted, because there was zero way this was a coincidence. MacDonald and the big guy disappeared from sight as they walked into the building, but it wasn't more than 2 minutes before there was a knock on the door. Maybe she could simply stay quiet, and MacDonald would go away. She had her ticket back to Munich. Or something had happened to Stephen, and she was being a colossal idiot. She'd told him she was with him, and she was wilting at the first sign of trouble. That wasn't the kind of partner she wanted to be. She ran to the door and threw it open. It didn't matter that the head of the project was about to know she was sleeping with the lead researcher. All that mattered was finding out what had gone wrong. Dr. MacDonald? Has something happened to Stephen? Hope MacDonald was a lovely blonde with green eyes that managed to constantly look cold. Even when she was smiling, there was an emptiness in the doctor's eyes that unnerved Ronnie. It was probably why MacDonald had gone into research. There was something off-putting about the woman that would likely lead to anxiety in any patient she worked on. She said all the right words, acted empathetic, but Ronnie always thought it was an act. Some people said the same thing of Stephen Reeser. "Why don't you let me in, dear?" Hope didn't wait for her to move, merely stepped around her and entered the apartment. She glanced around the living room, her gaze calculating. This isn't as posh as I would have thought. It needs a feminine touch. Dr. MacDonald, what are you doing here? Do you know where Stephen is? He hadn't wanted to tip off MacDonald about the interview, but she was too worried to keep her mouth shut, and it was far too coincidental that the doctor would show up just as Stephen seemed to disappear. Something is wrong at Kronberg. Something dangerous is going on, and I don't want to see my sister in the middle of it, Katie had warned her. Had Stephen been in the middle of it? Why had Rebecca run? Had she left for the same reason Stephen had been trying to get another job? Of course I know where Stephen is, MacDonald said, finally facing her. He's back in Munich. He left after our meeting this morning, but he won't be there long. I had to have this little interview with him here in Paris. Such a lovely city. His meeting had been with MacDonald. But he'd said he was leaving Kronberg. Why would you interview Stephen? He already works for you. This is a promotion, dear. He's going to head my Argentina office. I've got an interesting project going on down there at Kronberg's Buenos Aires subsidiary. MacDonald sighed, not paying any attention to the big man behind her. He was staring straight ahead, no expression on his face. I wanted to talk to him before I approved his transfer. He said he was going back to the States. She frowned, and her eyes rolled. He's such a bastard. If he weren't so good at his job, I swear I would fire him. I knew he was up to something when he insisted I come and pick up the rest of his things. She glanced at the guard. "Robert, I believe that's his laptop and tablet. Get those, please." The big man picked them up, along with the duffel bag Ronnie had put on the table when she'd decided to look through Stephen's email. He silently slipped them inside and zipped it up. Dr. MacDonald's focus was back on her. "So, he didn't mention that he was leaving Germany and going to South America? I suppose he also didn't bother to tell you he won't be coming back for at least a year." Her heart dropped. "No, he didn't." None of this made sense. He bought round-trip tickets. Why would he do that if he wasn't coming back with me? And why would he send you? He could have texted. She shrugged. "It's his game, dear. And I assume he sent me here as a message. Not for you, for me. I've been neglectful, and he wants me to know it. I've been busy and I haven't paid attention to him. He gets jealous, and he wants me to be, too." She hadn't thought her heart could sink any lower, but the implications of her words struck out like a slap. I didn't know." "Well, we can't advertise our relationship, of course. I'm his superior. Our relationship is somewhat out of the ordinary. He needs his little games to feel like a man. You know the type." She didn't. She didn't understand anything at all. Why would he do this to her? What was the purpose? How could he have looked at her the way he had? Like she meant the whole world to him. Dr. MacDonald seemed to take her silence as an opportunity to lecture. "He plays with women, Veronica. He needs to conquer. I'm sure that having a female as a boss doesn't help. Stephen is quite aggressive when it comes to sex. When it comes to anything, really." Tears pierced her eyes. "You truly didn't know, did you?" She turned to the big man behind her and gestured to him. He stepped back outside. "It seems Robert is not necessary. I have to worry. It wouldn't be the first time one of Stephen's perverse games went awry. I lost Dr. Walsh because of him. I hope I won't lose you, too. I promise he won't be back in Munich for a long time. He's been naughty, and I intend to rehabilitate him." She was talking like it was all some schoolyard thing she should easily forget about. One thing had come through clearly. He did this to Rebecca. He slept with her? Oh, he spent quite a bit of time with her, she said with an odd smile. It was almost wistful. At least, I'm sure it felt that way to Dr. Walsh. You know it's all about perception in the end. But if you're worried that people will think less of you, I assure you they won't. Stephen does this to everyone. Well, all the women, at least. I thank God he isn't more open-minded, or I wouldn't be able to keep a staff at all. Now I have to go. We're leaving in a few hours. It didn't make sense. Except maybe it did. Why had she thought this could work? Dr. MacDonald stopped at the door. "I'm sorry, Veronica. You're quite good at your job. You could be a functional doctor if you had a lick of confidence in yourself. I'm sure the innocence you project, the meekness, only made him more attracted to you. He's a bit like the devil, that one. He likes to trick people, enjoys knowing he has the upper hand. I will admit I like to play some of those games too, and Stephen understands I'm better at them than he is. Do you need a ride to the airport?" There was no way she was getting in that woman's car. "I'm fine. Thank you, Dr. MacDonald. My flight doesn't leave until later tonight. I'll see you back in Munich." She would decide what to do later. Even if Stephen wasn't physically there on a daily basis, she wasn't sure she could work there. She would forever be waiting to turn a corner and see him there, feel the burn of humiliation as he smirked and walked past her like she was nothing. Suit yourself, MacDonald said with a shrug. You'll need to report to the new lead. I'm letting Kronberg bring someone in from their burn office. Try not to let this one fuck you over, dear. Good luck. The door closed behind her, and Ronnie was alone again. The silence suddenly seemed deafening. Chapter 1. London, England, 3 years later. Ronnie stopped outside the room where she'd been told Stephen Reeser now lay in a coma. It was so normal. Not the building. The building was some kind of rich man's paradise, complete with a lobby that looked like it could be the front for a French bordello, and a garden in the foyer, if one could call the entire center of a building a foyer. There was probably some other term for it, but she hadn't spent the last several years learning about design. She'd spent them trying to survive. Why should I believe you? She winced because she hadn't meant to say the words out loud. Still, she turned to the woman who had shown up on her doorstep not 2 days before with the most incredible story. Kimberly Solomon was a CIA agent, if she was telling the truth, which Ronnie's mother was absolutely certain she wasn't. Oh, her mother believed Solomon worked for the CIA, but her mother didn't trust anyone at all. The gorgeous blonde had made a pretty convincing case, including documents and photos and a bunch of knowledge she shouldn't have had. And the woman could call up a special ops team whenever she liked. The woman, who liked to be called Solo, glanced at the closed door and back to Ronnie, as though she knew she was stalling. I've shown you all the documentation I can legally offer. I've explained who I am and why we need you. I can't do anything else, Ronnie. You either have to trust me or not, and I understand how hard that is. I don't trust her, and I know exactly who she is. The massive hunk of Viking DNA who'd greeted her when she'd entered the building watched Solo with suspicious eyes. Ian Taggart was a golden god of a man, and he knew all the right things to say. You are safe here. I'm not the agency, and I won't allow Solo to steal you away. All I'm looking for is some answers to help my men. You are free to come and go as you please, but if you need protection from something, we are here for you. I don't know what Solo told you about us, but I promise no one is going to fuck with you here. We've got a room for you. If you need sanctuary, you have it. The former Green Beret had said the words not 10 minutes before, and it had been right on the tip of her tongue to tell him yes. She wanted his help. She wanted to throw the entire situation into someone more competent's hands, so she could finally have some kind of a life. But she remembered everything Stephen had told her that day, how comfortable he'd made her feel before he'd cut her to pieces, and left her pregnant and alone and in danger. For her daughter's sake, she couldn't be a trusting fool anymore. She was right back to staring at the door. Does she think there's like a lion behind it or something? Taggart asked under his breath. She could practically hear Solo rolling her eyes. No. She thinks her ex is behind the door and she's not ready to see him again. Give her a minute, Tag. Or better yet, I'll stay with her and you can take your impatient ass to the conference room. I assume Damon has one. All the best sex clubs do. They'd been needling each other from the moment Solo had walked her in the door. From what she'd heard, Solo had done something to this private security group they hadn't forgiven her for yet, and they all spoke the language of sarcasm. They continued to bicker as she stared at the door and utterly ignored the sex club joke. She didn't think about sex anymore. She dreamed about it. She dreamed about the one man who'd shown her exactly how good sex could be. The one man she couldn't forget, no matter how hard she tried. Was Stephen Reeser here? Was he lying in a bed behind that door? How did you catch him? She hadn't asked all the pertinent questions. Solo had shown up with her convincing documents and much-needed cash, and Ronnie had made the calculated decision to go with her. Up until now, Solo hadn't given away the fact that she had a secret daughter. It seemed like Taggart and his group had no idea Violet Croft existed. Not that anyone knew her real name. According to all the German records, her name was Violet Fisher, daughter of Veronica Fisher. After what had happened to her sister, Katie, she and her mother had gone underground. Taggart frowned, the expression doing nothing to mar his masculine beauty. Catch him?
Yes. How did you catch Stephen? I assume he ran when Dr. MacDonald did, she said, taking a deep breath and stepping back. She wasn't ready to see him yet. She moved to the railing and looked out over the green space below. It was peaceful, but she'd learned that looks could be deceiving. Was he injured when the CIA raided?
Taggart snorted. The CIA didn't raid shit.
Only because someone didn't bother to bring us in, Solo countered. And you're welcome.
Taggart squared off with the CIA agent. For what? Despite the fact that Solo was almost 6 feet tall, she looked petite compared to Taggart.
For not being in a French jail right now.
Yeah, because French jail would be so tough on a guy, Taggart replied. I think I handled the authorities pretty well.
Or a Colombian jail, Solo replied. You remember that one? It wasn't Drew Lawless who got you out, that was Beck. And who do you think he called to make that happen?
Okay. I am willing to admit that I'm grateful for that one, Taggart allowed. I was pretty close to becoming a prison wife. There are some big fucking dudes in Cartagena, and they're mean. Charlie would have broken me out, but not before I lost something precious. She would have taken me back, though. She told me I should absolutely accept dishonor before death. I think she only said that because she needs my diaper-changing skills.
They were starting to annoy her. I can leave if you two want to keep the comedy hour going. I'm sorry. Solo backed off. I'm anxious about being here. Tag is a massive jackass most of the time, but he's solid when it comes to his job. And you need to understand that Tucker wasn't captured in any kind of a criminal way. He was MacDonald's prisoner.
She really should have asked more questions. But Solo had offered her a whole lot of cash for coming with her, and that cash might be able to get them all back to the States. It might buy them a new life.
Prisoner? He was her employee, her favorite employee. Why would she keep him prisoner?
We were hoping you could help us with that, Taggart said, his frown deepening. But you're wrong. He was definitely her prisoner. She experimented on him. He turned to Solo. How much did you tell her?
I told her we needed her to identify Stephen Reeser.
Solo leaned back against the wall.
I have to work within certain parameters. A lot of what I know is highly classified. You don't have that problem. I mean, what you know is absolutely classified, but you don't care.
A single shoulder shrugged. Not in any way.
But I think she knows more than she's saying, Solo replied, her blue eyes serious. I'm fairly certain she knows what Dr. MacDonald was working on. Her sister was writing an investigative piece when she died. When she was murdered. She wasn't going to let anyone pretend Katie had been killed in a random street crime. Assassinated might be a better word. Or executed. I don't have anything of hers if you're looking for her notes. I don't have them.
No one is trying to take anything from you. Taggart's shoulders straightened, and his eyes had softened. I promise. I hope you come to trust us. Dr. Walsh has.
Rebecca Walsh is here?
She hadn't seen Rebecca in years, not since the day she'd walked away. She'd read about Rebecca's accomplishments, but she hadn't reached out to her. Rebecca had been the one who'd gotten away free and clear. At least, it had seemed that way. Dr. MacDonald's reach went beyond the grave.
You really didn't tell her anything, Taggart said, a bit of accusation in his tone. I wanted to leave it to you, Solo replied quietly. I have nothing to do with it, Taggart argued. You wanted to leave it all to Ezra, so he'll forgive you for what happened in Munich. You want to push your way into this mission so you can be close to him. You would do the same in my place. Taggart's head shook. Nope. I would never have picked my job over my Charlie, which is precisely why I got out. But I get it. Ms. Croft, I don't need you to identify Reeser. Dr. Walsh already has. The man you knew as Stephen Reeser now goes by the name of Tucker. At some point, MacDonald turned on Reeser. She used an experimental drug to erase his memories and held him captive for several years. I'll let you read the files I have on him. It felt like the world shifted, and she couldn't find her balance. She used the drug on him? What drug? I know about the time dilation drug, but that wouldn't cause memory loss. Katie had found evidence that MacDonald was working on a drug and therapy protocols for time dilation. It sounded like something out of a science fiction movie. MacDonald had been developing a drug that tricked the brain into thinking time was passing more quickly than it was. It made the patient open to influence and suggestion. It could be used to torture someone without ever harming them physically. A day would seem like a month. Pain and fear made to seem endless. Had Stephen gone through that? Had Stephen helped MacDonald create a monster, only to be fed to it? It wasn't the time dilation drug. Though he was definitely put through that hell, Taggart explained. She had a drug that affected memory, too. Is that why he's in a coma? The drug? MacDonald supposedly died 3 years ago. He's been in a coma for that long? Or was it a side effect of coming off the drug? She hadn't practiced medicine in the last few years, but she remembered the dangers of testing new drugs. It was precisely why they didn't go straight to human trials. But then, MacDonald hadn't seemed to care much about other humans. He's only been in a coma for a few weeks, Tagg explained. And it wasn't from the initial drug. He'd recovered physically from that, and he was starting to get back a bit of his memory. While MacDonald held him, Tucker was given another drug, one that completely erased his memory. MacDonald used it in conjunction with the time dilation to build soldiers. Tucker was one of those soldiers. So was my youngest brother. That made her catch her breath. MacDonald had taken this man's brother. It had likely been her downfall. She'd only met Taggart a few minutes before, but she knew a dangerous predator when she saw one. Now she could recognize a dangerous man. It was because she'd been torn apart by one once. By the man behind that door. Tucker was a victim, Solo said. She wasn't buying it. In this, she could instruct them. I'm sorry to hear about your brother, Mr. Taggart. I can't imagine what he went through. But Stephen was likely a part of it. I assure you he knew everything MacDonald was doing. He was her right-hand man the whole time. There's an old Chinese proverb that fits Stephen to a T. He who rides the tiger is afraid to dismount. He played with fire, and he got burned. Stephen liked to play games. If you've brought me here to exonerate him, you've wasted your time, and I should head home to Germany. There was a part of her that wanted that exact outcome. It was perverse. She'd prayed every day for years that she would get her life back, that she could return to medicine and take her daughter home. But now that she was facing it, there was a certain amount of dread that came with change. At least she knew what to expect from her life in Germany. We've brought you here to try to help figure out the last few days of Reeser's life, Taggart corrected. I call it that because Stephen Reeser effectively ceased to exist the day MacDonald erased his memory. We're hoping you can fill in some of the blanks, because Tucker can't.
We need information concerning MacDonald's experiments and the people who worked with her. We're fairly certain Tucker knew who supported her crimes at one point. I think he might have stolen that information. I'm not sure why, but he's my best bet. You knew him better than anyone else.
She knew how he kissed, and what it felt like when he wrapped his arms around her and held her tight, the embrace promising protection. She knew he was a liar of the highest order. I don't know how much I can help you. He didn't tell me anything. You should know that up front. If that changes Miss Solomon's offer of cash and safety, then I should leave now. I told you she was touchy, Solo said under her breath.
Whatever Solo offered you, she'll come through, Taggart explained. She's a woman of her word. Mostly. If she doesn't, I can assure you my firm will take care of it. The garden is the safest place I know of in Europe. If you want to come to the States, I'll make sure you're safe there too. You and your daughter.
A chill went through her. She turned on Solo. There's one promise broken. Solo sighed and crossed her arms over her chest. I didn't tell him anything, but I should have known he has someone watching me. Whoever it is, he's good.
She, Taggart said with a smirk. Nina Blunt is one of Damon's new hires. She's former Interpol. It was a team effort, though. Hutch caught you going into Germany, and Nina did the groundwork.
He seemed to sober.
This is too important to me and my men, to leave this all in your hands, Solo. You've got people to answer to. People who might not do the right thing with the information if they got their hands on it. Ms. Croft, Solo didn't tell me about your daughter. Is the older woman traveling with you your mother?
She nodded, not sure how she felt about anyone knowing about her baby. Maybe that was one of the reasons she was scared of going home. She wouldn't be able to hide Violet. Yes. When my sister was murdered, she came over, and she's stayed with me. I stashed them at my place in Kensington, Solo explained. It's not far from here. I think they should be moved to the garden, but Veronica wanted to check it out first. The mom is actually pretty badass. Former Army.
Taggart's brow lifted. Good. Then we'll speak the same language. I'll want a dossier, but she's more than welcome. He glanced down at his watch. We've got the group meeting in 20. If you don't want to see him, how about we make our way to the conference room, and we can start to get some details worked out.
Did she want to see him? Was she stepping on a landmine and praying it wouldn't go off? He was alive. She'd been numb up to this point, and there was a lot of comfort in that detached feeling. Would she be able to keep that distance if she looked at him, if this became real? She stared at the door for a moment, but then the choice was taken out of her hands. The door flew open, and a man with reddish hair stepped out, a wild look in his eyes. "Rebecca!" He yelled out the name, and Ronnie could hear the thick Scottish accent even in the single word. He looked to Taggart. "I need Rebecca. She went to grab some coffee before I left for the meeting. I don't know what happened. Something's wrong with Tucker." There was a beeping sound, the one every doctor in the world knew meant trouble. She pushed past the Scottish man and into the room because either something was malfunctioning with the equipment or the man on the bed was dying. Stephen. He was right there. He was starker than he'd been, thinner, and his hair longer. But this was the man who had held her all night long, the man responsible for her pain, for the last few years of hardship. For her daughter. God, was she going to watch her daughter's father die in front of her? Taggart had the defibrillation unit in his hand. She grabbed it and got to work. Chapter 2. Tucker was in hell. or heaven. He couldn't decide which. The dreams shifted in and out. Dreams? He wasn't sure if they were dreams or reality bleeding into this place he found himself in. There were times when he could hear his brothers talking. Jax would be joking with Owen about some football match they were watching, the TV volume low in the background. He wanted to open his eyes and join them. They would be passing each other beers and munching on whatever snacks they could find. It would be nice and normal, and he could pretend nothing had happened. Or Robert would read aloud to him. The freaking news. Why? Tucker had asked inwardly. He was stuck in his body, and Robert wanted him to keep up with current events. The least the man could do was read him something interesting. Other times he was stuck in moments. Those were the times he wasn't sure about because it seemed real to him. He was there. He could see and hear and smell and touch. The best of times was when he was with a woman. Not some random woman, a very specific one. Veronica. Ronnie. He called her Ronnie right before he cupped her face and kissed her. He was so close. The feeling was there in his heart. He was close to having everything he wanted, and she was part of it. If he could get away, they could have a life together. All he had to do was... What was he supposed to do? He had something to do. Something that would make everything else okay. Something that would give him back his life. He had to remember. Had to remember. Had to remember. The pain started. It flashed through him with white-hot agony that threatened to melt his bones and leave him ravaged. He screamed out, in pain, in rage, because he'd been so close. The memory was right there, right on the edge. It was a shadow he couldn't quite catch. "I need you to stand back," a female voice said. Familiar. Haunting. So close. She was in his arms. She had felt right in his arms, and then he was running. Running from her, but not the same her. There was an angel and a devil in his dreams. He ran from one, ran to the other. Why did the devil have to catch him? Why couldn't he have stayed in bed with his angel? Would that have fixed things? Or would it have gotten her killed too? He'd been killed. He was a dead man walking, moving through his days without a past to animate him, to show him the path. So many people depending on him, and he couldn't remember his own fucking name. Lightning flashed through him, and he felt his whole body go stiff. "Charging," the voice said. Darkness. He was used to the darkness, but now there was a bit of light. Did he want to find that light? The darkness wasn't so bad. He got to see her here. Flashes of a time when he'd seen the possibilities laid in front of him. If he left, she would be nothing more than a flicker at the back of his head, something he tried to catch but couldn't. He would look for her in every woman he met. When the tension got to be too much and he had to have a woman, he would pick one who looked like her, instinct leading him when memory could not. She was every woman he'd gone to bed with in the last few years. But if he stayed here, he could be with her in those last few moments before the world had exploded. Time stopped here. He could choose again. Another jolt of lightning, and he realized he wasn't going to have a choice. He was being thrust into the light, and there was no way to stop it. But then he hadn't had a choice since the day Levi Green had walked into his life, had he? He'd been set on a path, and nothing would take him off it, not even falling in love with Ronnie. Levi Green. He'd been there. He'd been with Levi Green in some city that wasn't his home. His home was green fields and mountains. His home was the river winding through the valley, but he'd been born again in a city awash with lights, and yet again in that lab. Harsh light welcoming him into a world of pain and misery. "I've got a rhythm." The voice sounded closer now. "What happened?" Rebecca. He knew her voice. Oh my God, he was fine when I left. "He had a cardiac event, an acute coronary syndrome. Has he been having trouble with his heart?" He wanted to open his eyes because that voice was so familiar. Where had he heard it before? "No, he's been solid," Rebecca said. "But we don't know what that damn drug did to him, and according to Levi, it was the only dose, so I can't even test it to figure out what was in it." "He's telling the truth about that." The husky voice belonged to Kim Solomon. "How can you be sure?" Rebecca asked. "Because I was pretty much twisting his balls off his body when he told me," she replied. "Trust me, he would have given up anything to get me to stop." "Is Tucker okay? Should we get him to a hospital?" "Stephanie is on her way up," Owen said. Owen. His brother. One of them. He had brothers not born of blood, but of suffering and sacrifice. Sasha had sacrificed to save Owen. He was down a brother. He owed his brothers everything. The darkness would have to wait. He blinked and stared up at the light. He hated that fucking light. That light had always signaled another procedure, another dose of McDonald's medicine. Medicine to make her boys behave. "Tucker." Owen stared down at him, moving in front of the light and blocking it out. "Tucker, you're awake, mate." Rebecca was right at his side. "How are you feeling? We need to run some tests." "I'm okay." He wanted to sit up, but he was so tired. What happened? Where am I? "You're at the garden," Rebecca said. "You've been in a coma for 3 weeks. I need you to go slow. I still don't completely understand what's going on. You've just had a cardiac event. I'm going to have to study the reports to figure out exactly what happened. Ian, I need to clear the room. Steph and I will check him out and decide if we need to transfer him to the hospital." "You know why that's a bad idea," Ian replied. "I don't need a hospital." Hospitals asked questions and checked records and tended to let Interpol know when a red notice walked in. Besides, he was feeling stronger already. "Levi Green gave me a drug." "Yes." Owen stood behind his girlfriend, nodding. "That fucker put you in a coma." But apparently Solo's been playing with his balls, in a not good way. He'd always liked Solo. God, it was starting to come back to him. They'd been in trouble. Munich. He'd been in Munich at Kronberg, and everywhere he'd looked he'd seen ghosts. Robert. Robert had been with him. All of his brothers had shown up. Robert and Jax and Owen and Theo. Dante. Dante the betrayer. Dante had been McDonald's attack dog, hiding in plain sight, pretending to be one of them. Dante had killed Sasha, and Ari had killed Dante. And then he'd felt the burn of the drug entering his system. Yes, he remembered. He'd been caught by Green. Green wanted the information they'd broken into Kronberg to retrieve, a list of all of the people who worked with McDonald. Green wanted the list so he could get his place at the CIA back. The Lost Boys wanted it because it might help lead them to figuring out who they'd been before McDonald had erased them from the world. "Are you really okay?" Owen asked. He would be if Rebecca would stop examining him. He'd passed out and stayed out for 3 weeks. His head was foggy, but he needed some answers. "Is everyone okay? The last thing I remember, Ari killed Dante." "Yes, she saved Rebecca, but I'm so sorry we couldn't save you." Owen had gotten to one knee, giving Rebecca space to work, but it was obvious he wasn't going to leave. But we didn't let that bastard get away. Hey, maybe we should let Tucker rest. Ian stood at the back of the room. He's been through a lot, and I want to make sure he's all right before he gets out of that bed. He wanted nothing more than to get out of this damn bed. He had a million questions. I want a debrief. I want to know what's been happening. Everyone got out of the building okay? He started to try to sit up. Rebecca put a hand on his chest. No, you stay where you are until I'm satisfied. Normally, a gorgeous woman telling him he couldn't leave the bed until he'd satisfied her would be a good thing. Not today. I want to stretch. Let me get up and walk around. I don't feel weak. Well, you had a cardiac incident, so I disagree. Rebecca wasn't backing down. Besides, if you get up now, you'll have to carry your pee bag with you, unless you plan on ripping the catheter out, Tag said. I know that sounds manly, but the girly scream that will come from your mouth when you rip it out of your dick will be anything but. He stared at Tag. Naturally, his boss was here to add much-needed sarcasm to an already surreal situation. What? Tag shrugged. You were in a coma. Rebecca here thought you still needed fluids. I personally would have taken a Darwinian approach and set you outside to collect rainwater, but she had to be all technological. When you're hydrated, you pee. Again, I was willing to buy some puppy pads. Sometimes he hated his boss. I get it. I'm going to need someone to very gently remove that. Not Rebecca. She was like his sister. She'd probably seen him naked at this point if she was doing all the medical stuff. Yes, she was a doctor, but she was also living with his brother, and that meant she shouldn't know what his penis looked like, much less have intimate knowledge of how to thread a tube through the tip of it. He was going to fucking murder Levi Green. She's very gentle, mate, Owen offered. Rebecca rolled her eyes. I'm very professional. And you get to pick between me and Steph. We're the only ones I trust to do it. I could do it, Tag offered. I'll do it. After all, I'm a professional too, a voice from behind him said. The world seemed to stop at the sound. He knew that voice. Where did he know that voice from? It had seemed so clear only moments before, when he'd been in the dark place. He'd known more than he did in the light. She stepped into his line of sight. She was petite, no more than 5'3", but she had curves. Rich brown hair skimmed the tops of her breasts, though he couldn't exactly see those because she was wearing a sweater. Wide eyes and generous lips. She was exactly his type. This was the type of woman he sought out again and again. But she was frowning at him, and he so wanted to see her smile. It was what he always wanted. He hated it when she was sad, but he couldn't be overt about it. He couldn't simply walk up to her and do nice things because he had a job to do, and... Pain struck his head, hard and fast. His vision went foggy as he tried to hang on. He'd seen it when he was dreaming. He'd seen her. Damn it, Rebecca said. Tucker, I need you to stop thinking. Could we clear the room? He managed to shake his head and forced himself to focus because this was important. She was important. He knew her. Veronica. He managed to say her name. This was Veronica Croft. This was the woman who haunted his every dream. God, he hoped he hadn't hurt her. Hello, Stephen. She was looking at him like he was a bug, and she couldn't figure out whether to step on him or walk by. He'd been happy with her. He'd taken her to bed and wrapped himself around her. For those hours, she'd been his whole world, and it was okay, because he was almost done. He could get out and tell her the truth. What the fuck was the truth? He screamed the question in his head because the answer slipped away. Tucker, calm down, Rebecca admonished. "What's happening?" Stephanie Carter jogged into the room. She was the garden's resident doctor. Tucker had worked with her many times, offering his own weird medical skills to her solid ones. He would be able to open a practice when he was done. He was only putting it off for a little while, just until he found... He screamed as his brain threatened to explode. "What's wrong with him?" Veronica asked. He looked at her, needing to keep her in sight even if it killed him. "Don't be afraid." He didn't want her to be afraid of him. Everyone else was. It was necessary, but he couldn't stand the thought of her being afraid. Tag had a hand on her arm, ready to guide her away. "MacDonald trained his brain to punish him when he tries to remember. It's bad, and he's making it worse. We should get out of here and let the docs get him calm again." If she left, he might not see her again. He'd left. He'd walked out, but he'd meant to come back. He'd gone to meet... A soft hand was suddenly against his cheek. "Hey, it's all right. You don't have to remember." She was here. She was sitting on the bed, her eyes softer than they'd been before. "Stephen." "Tucker," he managed between clenched teeth because the pain was still ravaging him. "My name is Tucker. I'm not that fucker Reeser. Not anymore." She bit her bottom lip and seemed to come to a decision. "All right, Tucker. It's okay. Let it go. Need to remember." If he could remember, he might get her back. He might figure out what he was supposed to do. It was always there. Low-level anxiety in the back of his brain like a humming he couldn't get rid of. He was supposed to do something. People were counting on him. Lives were at stake, and he was lying in bed. Her hand smoothed back his hair. "No, you don't. Not now. It's all right. Let it go. We can talk about something else. Lie back down and let it go." She was so beautiful. Her eyes were a golden hazel. Sometimes she wore glasses. Tortoiseshell. That made her look like a sweet librarian. "Where are your glasses?" Her eyes widened slightly. "I got contacts." His heart rate is normal again. Rebecca looked back at him from the machine she was monitoring. "Keep talking. I think you're calming him down." Ronnie glanced her way. "This isn't fair." He lay down but reached for her hand. "I liked your glasses. I always thought about taking them off and laying them to the side before I kissed you. I missed you. God, even when I couldn't remember your name, I missed you. It's better now." The pain was receding. He was tired again, but her hand in his felt so good. He threaded their fingers together. "Nothing in his life has been fair," Tag said quietly. "I don't know who he was before, but he's a good man now. I'm going to move the meeting. We can do this tomorrow, and hopefully Tucker can be there." "Not until I'm sure he's okay," Rebecca replied. They were talking, but he didn't care. She was here. She looked down, and there was a sheen of tears in her eyes. This isn't fair. But she didn't take her hand back. He wrapped his other hand around hers, trapping her, because it might not be fair to her, but this was what he needed. Even as he fell back asleep, he was warm, for once. "You sure you want to do this?" Solo parked the Audi in the tiny garage connected to the small but luxurious apartment she owned here in London. It had been the first place they'd gone after the private jet had brought them here from Germany. "You can stay here for as long as you like. I'll take you back and forth to the garden." "I'm not sure of anything." Ronnie sighed. the events of the day playing through her head. She'd sat there for a long time, holding Stephen's hand, even as he'd fallen into a natural sleep. She should have immediately walked out, but she hadn't been able to do it. She'd sat there listening to the doctors talk about what had happened, staring at his face and wondering what he'd been through in the last few years. I don't know that man. Except she did. The man who had told her he liked her glasses and held her hand like she was a lifeline was exactly the Stephen Reeser she'd fallen for. This was not how she'd expected to feel. She wasn't sure what she'd expected beyond anger, but it certainly hadn't been compassion. More than that, she hadn't expected how warm she would feel the minute he'd touched her. He'd engulfed her hand with both of his, and she'd remembered how safe this man could make her feel. Did she not have the whole story? It might be good to keep some distance, Solo said, not moving to get out of the car. I know Ian wants you to stay at the garden, but I can handle him if you want to stay here. I'll go with you back and forth, and your mom can keep Violet. Ian isn't going to mention her to Tucker right away. You have some time. She shook her head. No. If I'm going to do this, I should be there. Besides, I'll feel better if Mom and Vi aren't alone all day. Mrs. Knight showed me around. The building looks secure, and I was told I could work with someone named Jax to get me everything I need to eventually return to the States. Jax, she'd been told, was some kind of genius with a computer. He might be able to help her with more than mere documents. She still had questions. So many of them, and it appeared the people Stephen was aligned with might have answers. I think that's a good idea. I'll hand over everything I have on your case. Will you stick around? She'd gotten used to Solo. She didn't trust the woman completely, but so far Solo had come through for her. For as long as I can, Solo replied. You should understand they don't trust me. My ex-husband is in charge of the team Tucker's on. I had to do something they didn't like a couple of weeks back, and to say he wasn't happy would be understating things. It had been interesting watching Solo deal with a bunch of very suspicious people. So Taggart's right, and you came after me as penance? Pretty much. She opened the door. Not that it's likely to work. Let's get you packed up. Have you decided what you're going to say about Little Miss Sunshine? Or are you going to lie to him? She forced herself to move, opening the door as the garage closed behind her. He's her father. If he'd lived, I would have told him about her. Likely in 4-letter words. Trust me. I meant to get cash out of that asshole, but then... Your sister was killed. Solo tapped the code in to open the door to the townhouse. It beeped and turned green. And then I was told Stephen died. She could still remember hearing that news. She'd been caught between rage and relief. There had been no closure for her, no moment when she could tell the man exactly what she thought. No moment when he could tell her why he'd done what he'd done. Solo opened the door and stepped into the hallway that led to her ultra-modern kitchen. How did you find out Reeser was dead? I kept in touch with one of my sister's friends. She wasn't interested in following up on Katie's story, but she sent along information about MacDonald and her group. Her sister's friend had sent her the information quietly, and she'd been the one to tell them to stay hidden. Ronnie had tried to learn as much as she could about what Katie had been investigating. She didn't know everything. There was a lot she seemed to have gotten wrong, and she owed her sister. She needed to find the truth and hold people accountable. Dr. MacDonald was a pro. She even had a small newspaper in Argentina cover the story of his death. Yes, she had help, I suspect, Solo said. Her father was a senator with ties to the agency. Which is precisely why we shouldn't be working with a CIA agent. Her mother stood in the kitchen. Despite the fact that it was almost 10 p.m., her mom hadn't changed into pajamas. Nope. There was no fluffy robe and slippers in her mom's closet. She was dressed in the utilitarian cargo pants and t-shirt she normally wore, the better to hide all her weapons. Sandra Croft had been a nurse in the army, but she was more of a soldier now than she'd ever been. Since losing Katie, her mother had gotten infinitely harder. But I believe I've made my opinion plain. You certainly have, Mom. They'd gone endless rounds over it. You get your wish. We're leaving. Her mom's shoulders dropped in obvious relief. Good. I'll get Violet ready. Ronnie braced herself for another fight. We're moving over to the garden. I met with Taggart, and he seems solid. There's a lot we don't know, and I think his group can help us. I've got a piece of the puzzle, and he has several. I want to know what he does. I didn't mean we should trade one CIA operative for another, her mom said, her mouth a flat line. I meant we should go back to Germany. I was making headway. She was lying to herself, was what she was doing. It had been a solid year since they'd had a lead to follow concerning Katie's death. No one cared anymore. But Taggart might. Especially if she could prove Katie was involved in trying to take down MacDonald. Taggart's not CIA, Solo said, leaning against the island. He got out a long time ago, and really, that was for the best. He's shit at undercover. The man is totally impatient and intolerant. I heard once he punched an informant because he chewed too loudly. He's better at shooting things. It fits his personality. Her mother ignored Solo. And that Knight fellow is former MI6. Former MI6 means he's likely currently associated with them. Do you understand what you're risking? Mom, I can't hide forever. I can't pretend like no one will ever find me as long as I work in a tiny Bavarian town selling tourists Christmas ornaments. It was how she'd spent the last few years. Besides, I don't honestly think anyone is coming after us. And maybe they never were. They got Katie. They don't care about us. I've wasted years, and I'm not going to put Violet through more. Her daughter would have to go to school soon. She couldn't exactly tell the authorities that her work visa was fake, because she was certain someone was trying to kill her over her dead sister's investigation into Illuminati-like corporations, so her daughter needed a bodyguard while she learned her letters. Nope, that wouldn't work at all. It would all start to fall apart soon. When she thought about it, Solo showing up on her doorstep had been a miracle. Her mother was quiet for a moment. We could go somewhere else. I can get us to South America. I have some connections there. Yeah, you won't stand out there at all, Solo said under her breath. I'm not hiding in South America. I want to go home, Mom. I want Violet raised someplace where we don't have to hide at all, she said, though she'd gone over this a million times. I'm taking Vi and staying with Taggart and Knight until we can get this whole thing sorted out. I would like for you to come with me, but I understand if you won't. Her mother sighed and turned. I'll get ready then. She followed her out because she didn't want to fight about this. Mom, I'm sorry you don't agree with me. Her mother turned as they reached the elegant living room. Was it him? There was no question what she was asking. It was him. So Stephen Reeser is alive. I'm not so sure about that. She quickly went over what she'd learned about Stephen's captivity. Technically, he's alive. He's been through some kind of medical testing. It affected his brain. He doesn't remember who he is. But he'd remembered her. Or he's lying, her mom pointed out. Wasn't he involved in MacDonald's medical research? What if he decided the best way to get out of being prosecuted for his crimes was to become one of her victims? He could have been pretending all this time, hide in plain sight. It's a very old tactic.
She didn't think so.
He wasn't pretending his heart attack.
That seemed to stop her mother in her tracks.
He had a heart attack? From seeing you? No. He was having some kind of reaction.
And he hadn't been faking the pain he'd felt when he'd tried to remember. She'd seen how his stats had fluctuated. He'd been in real danger. And then he'd calmed down when she'd touched him. Like she was magic or something. "Don't be afraid of me." The words had sounded tortured coming out of his mouth. He'd been so desperate in that moment that she hadn't been able to turn away from him. He was still the most beautiful man she'd ever seen.
"Tell me you're not interested in this man, Ronnie."
Her mother had the same look on her face she'd had the one time she'd snuck in after curfew as a teen. Disappointment. Disapproval.
"I'm not interested in being his girlfriend."
She wasn't going down that route again. But if he was alive, she had to deal with some things.
"But he is Violet's father."
Her mother's eyes flared.
"He left her." "No, he left me."
She wasn't sure what to do, but she knew she couldn't go back into hiding.
"I don't know if he left you willingly."
At some point, Solo had followed them, and it was obvious she was interested in the argument.
"He walked out willingly enough."
He'd kissed her and walked away without looking back.
"I'm interested in piecing that last day together," Solo admitted. "So is Tag in the group. You're the only one who was there, but I've put together some of the logistics. I'm not entirely certain Stephen Reeser meant to be on a plane to Argentina that day. Dr. MacDonald was known for being capricious."
Humiliation washed over her every time she thought about that day.
"I think she wanted to get him away from me. They were lovers, and she wasn't particularly happy he'd cheated on her with me."
Although she also hadn't been enraged. There had been a cold practicality to MacDonald that day. But then it was normal for her. Shouldn't she have been angrier? She had been later. She'd been colossally angry a week later when she'd fired Ronnie. Solo's face fell.
"I'm going to hope she was lying about that. I don't think Tucker will be able to handle it if he finds out he slept with her. She's the devil in his mind. Look, I'm only asking you to give him a chance. He honestly has no memory of who he was back then. I'm suspicious about his entire persona. It's a mystery, and one I intend to solve. I don't think he was at Kronberg to further his career. I'm worried he was there to investigate MacDonald and got caught. She didn't want to consider that he was innocent. If he was innocent, then he was tempting." "I doubt that. He liked his job, and he was incredibly ambitious. I wasn't the only one he played nasty games with. Ask Dr. Walsh."
"He didn't sleep with her," Solo replied.
"At least not according to Rebecca. But that's her story to tell. He did hurt her, though. Did you notice that she was the one taking care of him? She's forgiven him, because today he's one of the kindest, most loyal men any of us has met."
She hadn't had a chance to really talk to Rebecca Walsh. The doctor had been too worried about her patient.
"Or that's what he wants you to believe."
Her mother wasn't going to let up.
"But I can see my daughter needs closure. Let's hope she's doing this so she can move on, not so she can fall back into bad habits. I'm not going to allow my granddaughter to be used by a psychopath. You should understand that here and now." "I'm trying to explain to you that he's not a psychopath at all," Solo bit out. "I was there the day he went into the coma. He could have fought, but he went willingly toward that damn needle because Rebecca was in danger. He was willing to trade his life for hers. Whoever he was before, you have to judge him as he is now."
Who was Stephen Reeser?
now that he called himself Tucker. I didn't know him, her mother allowed. I only know that he ripped my daughter's heart out and was likely involved in a group that took my other daughter's life, so you'll forgive me if I'm skeptical. If I find out he was involved in Katie's death, I don't know that I'll care about the fact that he can't remember. She turned and walked away. Solo shook her head. Your mother is intense. I think she might have watched Terminator too many times. She'd often thought her mother could have been a model for Sarah Connor. We're all she has. She went a little crazy after Katie was killed. I don't know what she would have done if I hadn't needed her so badly. It was a lie. She was fairly certain her mother would have wreaked bloody vengeance on anyone she'd even suspected of having something to do with her daughter's murder. Her mother would be in jail or dead if she hadn't had Violet to concentrate on. Yeah, I get that, Solo agreed. I know this is hard on you, but I do promise this is a good group. I checked them out. She wasn't a trusting fool anymore. I have some contacts, and they verified what you said about McKay Taggart. They're known for taking care of their people and their clients. They're white hats, Solo said with a sad smile. And you aren't? My hat went gray a long time ago. Solo sank to her couch, sitting back as though the day had exhausted her. I always mean to do the right thing, but I have to think about what is best for my country. That doesn't always leave me with clean hands. I can't pick and choose my morality. I have to make hard calls at times. But not once have I made one of those calls with anything but duty in my heart. Until you. I should have taken you straight to Langley. Why didn't you? Solo was quiet for a moment. Because I think this is going to get messy. And you're innocent in all of this. That baby girl is definitely innocent. I can't protect you the way Tag and his men can. They'll protect you from everything. Even me, if it comes to it. Because if the CIA decided to use her, Solo would be the one to facilitate it. She got that. She knew the agent had divided loyalties, but from what she could tell, McKay Taggart didn't. But their loyalty would be to the man they called Tucker. Where would that leave her if their interests diverged? Should I tell him about my daughter? I could lie. DNA doesn't lie, Solo replied. That is Tucker's kid. She'd forgotten, or she'd gotten used to not thinking about Stephen. She'd forgotten how much Violet was starting to look like her father. She had his golden brown hair, and God, she had his eyes. Blue and clear as the sky. It went beyond mere looks. She tilted her head the same way he did when he was curious. Was she doing the right thing? What if he tries to take her? What do I do if he tries to get custody? My greatest fear is he'll take me to court. Solo snorted, an oddly elegant sound. Oh, he's not going to court. He's wanted by Interpol for lots of crimes he sort of committed, but it was under duress, so that's not going to be a problem, and Ian would never let it happen. Tucker is his employee, she pointed out. Yeah, but you're his client, and he takes that shit seriously, Solo replied. Earlier today I wrote Ian a large check. He would protect you anyway, but now he has the resources to do whatever he needs to do. His job is to protect you and your daughter and your mother. Come on. I'm trying here. She took a deep breath and made her decision. All right. Then we're going to the garden, and I'll talk to Tucker about his biological child. He wouldn't remember that he'd taken part in her conception, but he deserved to know, because Violet deserved to know. Ronnie started toward the bedroom she'd slept in the night before, the one her daughter was sleeping in now. It would be all right. Tucker would likely not consider Vi his. After all, he'd said it himself. He wasn't Stephen Reeser. You're making a mistake. Her mother stood outside the room she'd stayed in. She already had her bag packed, but then Sandra Croft traveled light. He's not faking it. If you had been there with me, you would know. No one can fake that. Someone tried to give him a cure, and it went poorly. The man I met this afternoon, he wasn't the same Stephen. Only because he's forgotten, her mom said ominously. But anything that can be forgotten can be remembered. What if this cure takes some time to work? What if he wakes up and remembers exactly who he is? Then where will you be? I hope you know what you're doing. You're betting all our lives on this group. Her mom knew how to make an exit. She walked away, and Ronnie walked into the bedroom, looking for the one thing in the world that could truly calm her. Her daughter. Vi was asleep, her arms wrapped around the doll Ronnie's boss had given her at her second birthday. They hadn't had a party because they rarely had people to the small flat they rented. Vi deserved a party. She deserved cake and friends and to be able to walk in the sun and not be afraid. Tears threatened as she looked down at her baby. So much had gone wrong, but Vi was one good thing to have come from the mess she'd made. She had to do everything she could to give her a better life. Don't be afraid of me. He'd known her. What if her mother was right? It didn't matter that Tucker was some kind of saint. He hid a devil. And the devil seemed to know her name. A moth to the flame. She was going to get burned all over again. She just had to make sure her daughter survived. Chapter 3. Tucker came awake with a hole in his gut. Hungry. He was so damn hungry. His stomach growled, and he forced himself to sit up. The lamp was on, and all around him there was the soft sound of medical equipment beeping and purring. This wasn't his bed, but he often wasn't in his own bed. What had happened? He'd been having the strangest dream, and then... He was at the garden, and he'd been in a coma for weeks. He'd woken up, and Rebecca had told him he'd had an incident with his heart, and Tag had offered to pull a tube out of his dick. That felt way more normal than it should. Something hadn't been normal, though. Veronica. Ronnie had been here. Hey, stay calm, man. If those beeps get bad, they won't unhook you. Robert was sitting in a rocker to the side of the bed Tucker was in. You've still got an IV and a whole bunch of attachments reading your heart rate, but I managed to talk them into taking out the catheter. Owen was right. Rebecca has a gentle touch. You didn't even wake up. At least he'd been spared that humiliation, but he wasn't worried about his medical state. Where is she? She's having dinner with Owen, Robert replied. Steph is around, though. She's been checking on you. I meant Veronica. Had she left? Where was she? She'd been missing for years. He remembered that much. Finding her had been part of the mission they'd been working in Munich. The minute he'd heard her name, he'd known she was important to his own story. He hadn't been able to recall any of the pertinent facts about her, but there had been a feeling he couldn't deny. A hollowness. Like he'd always known something was missing, and it now had a name. Ronnie. She couldn't be gone. Veronica Croft? Robert sat down at the end of the bed. I saw Solo bring her in. I haven't met her yet. I'm sorry I wasn't here when you woke up. I was with Ari, visiting her mom. She's been under the weather. I should have been here. I'm sure you rarely left my bedside. You get to have a life, Rob. Do you know where Solo took her? Is she still here? She had to be in London. If she left, he would lose her again, and he couldn't lose her. He had zero idea why, but he knew the most important thing in his life right now was getting close to Veronica. He needed to talk to her, needed to figure out why she was constantly in his dreams. I'm not sure. I got back and they told me what happened. I came in here to wait for you to wake up, Robert replied. Solo took her and left a couple of hours ago. She's coming back in the morning. We're having a big meeting in the conference room, and I think she's going to be there. I want to see her tonight. He couldn't lie in bed and wait. Too much could happen. He needed to know she was okay. Why had she been in hiding all this time? Why? God, he needed to know if she'd been hiding from him. Robert stood, his brow furrowing in obvious worry. I think you should take it easy. A lot has happened in the 3 weeks since you've been down. We need to talk about it. Robert was the most reasonable of his brothers. If Owen were here, he'd already be plotting how to get them out of the building. But no, he had to deal with Robert, who always proceeded with caution. He didn't have time for caution. How about you write me up a memo? Pass me that kit the docs left. Robert sighed and put the small container on Tucker's tray. It was a good thing that Rebecca and Steph were always prepared. They'd left exactly what he needed to get out of this place. He opened it and found the bandage and gauze that would make this whole process far less messy. Tucker gripped the line that held his IV. What are you doing? Robert's hands went to his hips. Don't do that. He eased the cannula out and thanked the universe muscle memory was a thing. He bandaged his hand with very little trouble. All that mattered was he wasn't tethered to this freaking bed. It's fine. I know what I'm doing. He stood on shaky legs and glanced around. This wasn't the bedroom in his apartment. He wasn't completely certain where he was. He wasn't in the clinic Stephanie Carter had put together, but then it was really only for minor accidents. They would have put him in a place suitable for long-term care. He needed pants. Yeah, you're walking around with your ass hanging out. Robert followed him into the hall. You planning on running around Chelsea screaming her name? It's a subtle play. I'm going to find pants, and then I'll run around Chelsea very quietly screaming her name. The important thing was finding her, and making sure she didn't disappear again. Although if he could find her and a cheeseburger, it would be a good thing. Does anyone have Solo's number? Someone had to have it, right? Did CIA agents give out their numbers? Ezra probably knew where she was. He said he didn't want to have anything to do with his ex-wife, but Tucker was pretty sure the man knew where she was at all times. He would likely say he needed to know where the enemy was or some shit, but Tucker knew better. There was some serious drama that would play out between the two of them. Robert strode beside him as he walked out into the hall. I don't think calling Solo is a good idea. He was right. If he called her, then she would know he was coming. Yeah, I don't want to give her a heads up. Smart thinking. I need the element of surprise. She'll be surprised, all right, Robert agreed. Everyone will be, since you're supposed to be in bed. They'll be super surprised when you have another heart attack and die. I'm not going to die. I feel fine. Rebecca would have taken me to a hospital if I was in serious danger. He stopped because he wasn't exactly sure where he was. The garden was a big building, and he wasn't in the office section or the residential part. Where's the elevator? Robert stared him down. I thought you knew everything. Tucker sighed. Come on, man. I have to find her. Veronica? She's important? Tucker nodded. Yes. I can't explain, but I know she was important to me. In a you were in love with her way, or she tried to kill you way? Robert's question was fair, since he'd recently been through the ringer with his ex-wife, who'd also been the reason he landed in McDonald's clutches in the first place. I don't know. Maybe both. He couldn't be sure. The way his life seemed to go, he'd been in love with her, and she would turn out to be an assassin with a hit on him. Can we slow down for a minute and talk this out? You know nothing about this woman. I know I need to find her. How could he make Robert understand? This voice inside me is saying I need her. Need who? Jax came out of a door to the left. He carried a can of soda and smiled broadly as he caught sight of Tucker. Hey man, you're up. How are you feeling? And now he knew where he was. The basement halls all looked the same. Jax kept an office here. Jax was exactly who he needed. Owen might help him run up and down the streets looking for Ronnie, but Jax might actually be able to find her. Hey, I need you to figure out where Solo would stash a guest. I assume she's a guest, right? Or did Solo, arrest her or something? She would be in a worse mood if she was stuck in a cell somewhere. But then, of course, she might be in a better mood if he rescued her. She might be more inclined to talk to him if he saved her. There was always a bright side to things. I think Solo's coming in, Jax said, holding up his phone. I got a text from Tag a few minutes ago. He said I'm supposed to go down and meet Solo and escort her and our guests up. Penny got their rooms ready. They're in a 2-bedroom on the 4th floor. Not far from you, actually. Do we know who she's bringing in? Not really, Robert said, and that's a problem. We have no idea what this woman wants. She could want revenge for something Tucker doesn't even remember he did. Have we forgotten that we got shot up by the last woman who said she knew one of us? She did know you, Jax shot back. She was your wife. Who is this new chick saying she is? I used to work with her at Kronberg. So did Rebecca. He wouldn't believe she was coming in until he actually saw her walk through the doors. She would have to come in through the garage at this time of day. It's night, right? He didn't even know whether it was light or dark outside. There hadn't been a window in his room. Like there hadn't been windows in the cells they'd been kept in when he'd been one of MacDonald's soldiers. He hadn't known whether he would walk out into the light or have cover of darkness. His body had lost its natural rhythms. It was one more form of torture. Yeah, it's almost 10 p.m., Robert affirmed. Why don't we let Jax do what he needs to do and I'll get you something to eat. When he's done, Jax can come down to the kitchen and give us a report. I don't think you need to confront this woman until we know who she is and why she's here. I know Tag wants to question her, but I want to know what she's been hiding from for the last couple of years. Me. It was what he was afraid of. She was hiding from me. Then why had she shown him such compassion earlier? She could have walked away, but she'd stayed with him. She'd been holding his hand when he'd fallen asleep. She'd calmed him down, and that was why he'd been able to relax. He shouldn't have fallen asleep. He should have stayed with her. He shouldn't have left her. She'd been the one sleeping that day. A flash of Ronnie lying wrapped in white cotton sheets whispered across his brain. Her hair spread across the pillows, and her eyes closed as the early morning light caressed her skin. Don't go there, Robert said, staring at him like he knew what was going on in his head. I think you should get back in bed. The pain stabbed at him, but he took a deep breath and tried to let it go. He wouldn't find her there. If she was here, then he wanted to see her. He turned and started toward the elevators. He's killing me. Robert groaned behind him, and then he heard the sound of feet pounding as his brothers caught up to him. So we keep close and make sure she's not here to murder him. You know, half this job is making sure one of us has backup while he's doing dumb shit, Jax said, falling in beside him. I'm sorry I missed out on your ex. All the good drama happens when I'm not around. It wasn't good drama, Robert groused. It was awful. And a whole lot of people died, and Rebecca got kidnapped, and Tucker went into a coma. That last part wasn't actually your ex-wife's fault, Tucker pointed out.
It was Levi Green's, and we need to talk about him, too. I don't honestly remember much after he injected me. Is he alive? The man deserved a bullet, but his death would complicate things. Green might be the only person who could tell him the truth. That's one of the things we should talk about, Robert insisted. Once you get back in bed. Jax shook his head. He's not getting back in bed, man. Tucker, we think Levi's alive. I tracked Solo putting him on a plane in Munich that went back to D.C. I lost them from there because the CIA is pretty damn good at hiding their tracks. I believe he was taken somewhere to be debriefed, hopefully in the harshest of ways. He hasn't resurfaced, so I think they're either holding him or they've gotten rid of the problem. If they took him back to the States, they wanted to talk to him. Robert seemed to give up on getting him back to the room. I have a hard time believing they would kill him. He knows way too much, and he'll likely work out some kind of deal. He'll be back when we least expect it. Has anyone asked Solo what she did with him? I'm sure Tag did, and I'm sure she told him shit, Jax replied. The question is, can we get Ezra to smooth talk her? She might tell Ezra. He's been in a bear of a mood since she betrayed us, Robert said. You should be glad you missed that. He sent Robert a glare. I missed it because I was in a coma. Robert shrugged. You still got to miss it. I've been avoiding him. He didn't even smile at the wedding. Tucker stopped. He'd missed a lot. Wedding? Robert winced. Yeah. Ari and I got married. So did Rebecca and Owen, Jack said with a smile. Double weddings are a thing here. We had it right in the garden, so you were kinda there. Not that we had the ceremony in your room or anything. It was in the actual garden part of the garden. I thought we should do a whole weekend at Bernie's thing and have you stand with us, but Rebecca put the kibosh on it. I'd picked out an outfit for you, including sunglasses and this awesome hat for the pictures. She said no. Something about keeping you hooked up to all the machines. Doctors never let you have any fun. You didn't even wait for me to wake up? This team was his family. It hasn't even been a month. Most people can't plan a wedding in a month. Robert's expression had gone solemn. We didn't know when you were going to wake up. If you were going to wake up. And honestly, after everything that went down, it was kind of a live-for-the-moment thing. Between what happened to you and Sasha and Peter dying, I didn't want to wait. Tucker took a deep breath. Sasha had died right in front of him. Peter had gotten out of the spy game and he'd still died. Dante had betrayed them all. Robert had needed an affirmation of life. They all had. Yeah, I get that. But I hope you took pictures. Did he cry? Jax grinned. Like a baby. I did not, Robert shot back. I teared up once. It was my wedding. And I'm pretty sure this time my wife won't hand me over to a crazy doctor. I was emotional, and I missed my best man. I'm sorry I'm acting like a mother hen, but I've sat at your bedside for weeks hoping you would wake up. He got it. I know you were worried. But I have to find Veronica. She can fill in so many gaps, and if possible, I need to talk to Levi Green. I'm not letting him anywhere near you. Robert looked at him like he'd gone insane. He wanted me to remember for a reason. I think I worked with him. I had this dream that I was meeting him somewhere. And it had felt like a beginning. It had felt like he was starting something important. That doesn't prove anything except that the fucker is in your head, Jax replied. A dream isn't a memory. He stuck a needle in your neck. Of course you had a nightmare about him. Given that we don't know what that drug was or how it was supposed to work, we can't trust anything it does to your memory. Robert pushed the button for the elevator. Can you put on pants before we confront the next woman who might try to kill one of us? The elevator doors opened,
and Owen was standing there. A grin spread across his face. "You're up? Tucker, mate. You have no idea how we've worried. I thought you might be stuck in that bed forever." "Is that why you posed him?" Jax asked. Dear God, what had his brothers been doing? He posed me? What the hell does that mean? Owen shrugged, holding the door open. "Seemed a shame to leave you like that. Besides, they're supposed to move you around a bit. Lying in one position is bad for a body. I just took it a bit further. Got costumes and everything. Don't worry, I took pictures. I made a book of them. I call it All Tuckered Out. Everyone gets one for Christmas this year." It was good to know his friends had his back. Sometimes his brothers were assholes, but it was probably pretty funny. He was self-aware enough to know he probably would have done the same if he'd been on the other side. "I look forward to it. Now I need to get down to the parking garage. Solo's bringing Veronica back." She was coming back. Willingly. It was a good sign. Or was Solo forcing her back? Solo would do a lot to help her cause with Ezra Fane. She loved her ex-husband, and had done some crazy shit to get his attention. "Pants first," Robert insisted, as he pressed the button for the floor they all lived on. "I don't know, mate," Owen said as the doors closed and they started going up. "If we're worried she'll react to him like Rebecca did. Him being in a Johnny with his arse hanging out might make him less threatening." He reached behind and pulled the gown together. No one ever gave him any dignity. "How long did she stay after I fell back asleep?" "Not too long," Owen said. "Rebecca cleared the room pretty quick, and she and Stephanie examined you and went over all the reports. They decided you were stable enough to keep you here." "I feel fine." He felt tired, but then he'd been stuck in a bed for 3 weeks, and perversely, that could sap a man of his strength. "Did she say anything?" "No." Owen shifted slightly. Having the 4 of them in that tiny elevator was a lot. It made him feel like a hulking ogre to Ronnie's delicate pixie self. She wasn't a tiny thing, but he was so tall he felt like she was petite. The elevators at Kronberg had been one of the only places where he could stare at her all he liked, though he had to be careful. There were cameras in there. There were cameras everywhere. He took a deep breath and let the thought go. If he followed down the path, he would end up sick as a dog, and Robert would haul him back to bed. He would miss his chance to see her. "You okay?" Jax was staring down at him as the doors opened, revealing the familiar hallway that led to the rooms he'd been given when he'd come to live at the garden. "You went white," Robert pointed out. "I'm hungry, that's all." If he admitted what was happening, they would all freak out, and he didn't want to be the patient again. He'd always been a shitty patient anyway. That's what his mom had told him. He didn't like to be in bed. He liked school and didn't want to miss class. Grades. He needed good grades to get into the best medical school possible. "Then let's get you some food." Robert put a hand on the door to keep it from closing. "I think we should talk to Rebecca about that. He hasn't had anything solid in 3 weeks." It appeared Owen listened to his girlfriend now. Wife. Rebecca was Owen's wife. "I need to take it slow at first." He stepped out, and then stopped, because they weren't alone in the hallway. "Jax, you meathead. What about go down to the parking garage and help Solo, do you not understand?" Big Tag was standing in front of one of the apartments that was normally vacant. He'd propped open the door and appeared to be moving stuff into the room. Brightly colored stuff. Kids' stuff. "Sorry, boss," Jack said, sounding entirely unsorry. "I got sidetracked. Tucker's up, and he needs pants. You know how you always tell us to wear pants." "I tell you to wear condoms," Tag replied with a frown. "But pants are good too. Tucker, you need to be in bed. Jax,
Get your ass in gear. They'll be here any minute, and I don't want to have to explain. Whatever Tag said next was lost, because the elevator doors opened again. And there she was. Veronica Croft stood in the elevator, her eyes wide as she caught sight of him. She wasn't alone. Solo was there dressed in what Tucker had long ago decided was her uniform. Chic slacks, an expensive but toned-down blouse, and heels she could run in. The woman next to her was older, and looked like she spent a lot of her time working out. But it was the baby in Ronnie's arms that truly caught his attention. Solo had a hand on the elevator door, keeping it open. "Tucker, you're up. Ian, I thought we were going to deal with the introductions in the morning." She said it with the tight jaw of a woman who'd had her plans upended. The whole room seemed to stop, everything going quiet, and his vision focusing in on that child with her golden brown curls and big blue eyes. She clung to Ronnie with one arm around her neck and the other hand waving. He knew there was conversation going on around him. Tag said something, but he didn't quite hear it because the world had focused down to one thing. "How old is she?" Solo sighed and stepped out of the elevator. Veronica followed her, and the super-fit woman moved out as well, putting her body between Ronnie and Tucker. He had the wildest urge to challenge her. She shouldn't come between the two of them. She was standing there like she had the right to keep Ronnie from him, but no one did. Ronnie was his. "Dax, is it just me, or is that kid the spitting image of Tucker?" Owen asked. "Thank God I'm here for this," Jax breathed. "I've missed all the soap opera stuff. I thought they were enemies." "Yeah, because no enemies ever threw down and made a baby," Owen replied. He was usually the one standing in the background making snarky comments. It was obnoxious. He ignored them all, concentrating on Veronica. He apparently needed to ask the question again. "Ronnie, how old is that child?" Her arms wrapped around the baby. "She's yours, if that's what you're asking." Well, at least he'd figured out what his relationship with her was. Tucker took a deep breath and made a big decision. Ronnie bit back a yawn as the elevator started to go up. It had taken longer than she'd planned to get ready. It was surprising, since they hadn't exactly packed heavy. "You're sure we didn't need to bring the crib?" "Trust me, the way these people breed, they have lots of options for you," Solo assured her. "Violet won't be the only kiddo living here. The Knights have a son, and if Tag stays here for any amount of time, expect his wife and all... I think it's like 4 kids now? I could be wrong. I swear Charlotte spits them out faster than I can count." Would Vi be an only child? She hadn't really thought about it. All she'd thought about for the last few years had been surviving, but seeing Stephen today had her brain on overdrive. "I want to meet this Taggart person and make my own judgments," her mother said. "The Knight fellow, too. I take it this is an all-male group." "Not at all." Solo glanced at the display that showed them moving up the building. "They have several female operatives. This is the London office. Knight's wife often takes assignments. She's former MI6, but her specialty is languages. Carmen Vega is a new hire. She's ex-CIA. Nina Blunt is excellent at following people around. Ariel Adisa is the resident profiler. She got married recently. I don't remember if she changed her name or not. Probably not, since Robert's last name is made up anyway. Maybe he took her name." Robert is one of the men found with Stephen. It wasn't a question. She simply needed to remind herself that relationships here would be complex. Solo had told her there were 5 men still alive who'd been MacDonald's soldiers. 2 of them had recently died in the mission that resulted in Stephen being in a coma. Tucker. She had to think of him as Tucker. And she had to think of him as a stranger, because no matter what her mother said,
She didn't think he was tricking her. Stephen Reeser was dead, but his DNA was still walking around. Did she owe him anything at all concerning their daughter? Yes, they're all here, Solo explained. Everyone who's left, except Theo Taggart. He went back to Dallas after the wedding. We might think about moving you there if you want to go to the States, at least until we're sure you're safe. Dallas isn't our home, her mother said. It could be. Any kind of a home would feel good. Any place where she didn't have to hide who she was. Any place where she could start over and try to build something for her and Violet. She wanted to get back to work, though she had no idea how she would explain the gap in her resume beyond the fact that she'd had a baby. Explaining why her last employer wouldn't give her a recommendation would be harder. The doors came open, and she stopped thinking about the future because her past was standing right there. Stephen was still wearing a hospital gown, but she would know that naked ass anywhere. Despite the fact that he'd been in a coma, his butt still looked amazing. He wasn't alone. Ian Taggart was standing there surrounded by men. She'd met the red-haired Scot, but not the other two. They were both tall and strong-looking men, one with dark hair and the other a golden blonde. Taggart seemed to be lecturing them all. I tell you to wear condoms, but pants are good too. Tucker, you need to be in bed. Jax, get your ass in gear. They'll be here any minute, and I don't want to have to explain. Solo put a hand on the door. Tucker, you're up. Ian, I thought we were going to deal with the introductions in the morning. He sighed as he caught sight of them. Sorry, Solo. The puppies got distracted. Stephen, Tucker, stared right at her, his blue eyes going wide. How old is she? She'd known he would likely ask about the baby, but he wasn't merely saying, Hey, didn't know you had a kid. Nope. The question was asked with a suspicious, Hey, is that my kid, tone. Wasn't he not supposed to remember anything? She was supposed to have the upper hand. She was supposed to get to spring this on him. Maybe if she stayed in the lift, Solo would get out, and the doors would close, and she could go back down. She could walk out and get in a cab and not look back. How had she thought this would be easy? How had she thought she could hold up Vi and say, Hey, she's yours, but you don't remember and I understand, so will you help take care of her financially and we can leave it at that? As soon as I get a good-paying job and can use my real name again, I won't need help. Did the dude with no memory even have money to help support a daughter he had zero connection to? This was stupid. Solo held the door open, blocking option number 1. There was nothing for it. She stepped out. The Scot said something that had the big blonde guy grinning as though he'd found a spectacular show to watch. Blonde guy said something about a soap, but she didn't pay attention because her mother was placing herself bodily between her and Tucker. She watched his jaw tighten, and for a second, he looked like his counterpart. There was that ruthless will she'd always associated with Reeser. He didn't like anyone getting in his way, anyone getting between him and what he wanted. Ronnie, how old is that child? A simple question, and yet there was so much tension in the words. She could lie. She hadn't even considered it until this moment. He'd been dead, so she hadn't had to consider it. Her brain whirled in those few seconds. She could lie. No one would believe her since Vi looked so much like her father. Then they would go through a ton of tests, and the truth would come out anyway. Or he would accept it and not care. She could tell him the truth, and he could still not care. She would be alone. But that was all right, because she wasn't about to trust him again. Even if he'd forgotten everything, the core of a person didn't change, and he was still lurking in there. The man who'd used and left her. She's yours, if that's what you're asking. There, she'd said it. He stopped for a moment. "What are you doing, Veronica?" Her mother turned her way. "I told you I wasn't going to lie." There had been far too many lies between them, and now he would explain that he didn't consider Vi his, since he was no longer the man who had fathered her.
"See, this is why I tell you all to wear condoms," Taggart said under his breath. "You never know when that fun night is going to suddenly grow hands and feet and need a diaper change."
Tucker walked straight up to her and stared at Violet, a look of wonder in his eyes. "She's beautiful. Can I hold her?" "Of course you can't hold her," her mother snapped. But Vi was already reaching out to the new guy. Her daughter was leaning toward him like he wasn't a stranger at all. She grinned, showing off her pearly baby teeth and making grabby hands. She liked it when tall people held her. Yeah, that was it. She couldn't possibly know this was her dad. Tucker raised her up, and father and daughter considered each other for the first time. She took a step back because it seemed like such a solemn moment. "You don't know this man." Her mother leaned in, lowering her voice. "We know nothing about him." He was Violet's dad, wasn't he? He was acting like it. Her gut was in a knot. What if she was making a horrible mistake? Again. But she needed him. She needed to figure out what had happened to her sister so they could all move on. Hiding wasn't working anymore, and if Solo could find them, then someone else could too. She was out of options. "Aren't you supposed to be supporting her head?" The Scot moved in behind Tucker.
"She's not a baby. She's a toddler," Taggart said. "They're way worse. You missed the screaming, crying part, Tucker. But it looks like you managed to make it for the rough part. She's mobile enough to do some serious damage." But his lips had curled up, as though he didn't mind. Tucker pulled her in close, his arms supporting her body as she started to pat his face. "What's her name?" "Violet." "Like the flower. That's pretty. Hello, Violet. I'm your dad." "And I'm her grandmother." Her mom moved to stand in front of Tucker. "I'm Veronica's mom. We never met before because you used her and left her behind." Tucker's jaw went tight. "I don't know about that. I think there's more to it. I get these flashes. I think I loved her." "That's awfully convenient," her mom said. "You left her behind, and now you need her, you suddenly love her. It must be nice to wipe the slate clean. Where's my room? Unless you're planning on moving in with him now that he's back." Taggart pointed to the door behind him. "Right in there. It's a 2-bedroom. Why don't we get you settled in before you start wreaking bloody vengeance on my men? Jax, you want to help me set up this crib?" "No." The golden-haired man named Jax shook his head. "I'm waiting to see what happens next." "What happens next is I kick your ass if you don't give them some space." Taggart practically growled. "Come on, people. Robert, why don't you go get Tucker some pants?" Tucker's gorgeous face turned pink as they were left alone in the middle of a hallway. "I'm sorry about the hospital gown. I woke up, and I didn't want to miss you." "Why? According to Solo, you don't really know me. I can take her back if she's heavy. You just woke up." He held her close. "She's not heavy at all." "You haven't been well." Something about him holding their daughter made her antsy. A sad expression crossed his face. "Here. I wouldn't want to drop her." He passed Violet back to her. She took her daughter in her arms. "She's not usually up this late. Why did you come back? If you think I did all those things to you, what did I do to you, Ronnie?" He was so heartbreakingly gorgeous, and there was a wealth of worry in his eyes. "Did I physically hurt you?" He'd broken her heart, but that wasn't what he was asking.
You never hit me or anything. You didn't get physical with anyone that I knew. You were gentle around me.
We were together. He said the words like he was tasting them, getting used to the flavor. Of all the scenarios that had run through her head since the moment Solo had told her Stephen Reeser was alive and not at all well, never once had she imagined this one. He looked like he wanted them to have been together. Not like he would accept the simple fact, but like he would be disappointed if they hadn't had a relationship. She hadn't lied about Violet. She wasn't about to start now.
Not really. We knew each other at work, spent some time together outside of it, but I wouldn't call us friends. We spent one night together, and then you left. You didn't even say goodbye.
He stepped back. That doesn't jibe with what's in my head. When I think about you, it's not guilt that I left you. It's happiness that I got to be with you. I can see you in bed. I was looking down at you, and the feeling I got. I wanted to finish what I was doing so I could get back to you. I had to finish something. His hand went to his head. It's right there. It's clearer than it was before. I think those drugs he gave me are starting to work. He paled the way he had earlier in the day. When he tried to think about the past, it made him ill. Someone had done this to him. A sweat broke out over his forehead.
Hey, you're going to scare Violet.
She kept her voice even because she didn't want to scare her daughter either. He looked up, and though his jaw was tight, he seemed to breathe easier. I don't want her to be afraid of me.
I know.
Ronnie rubbed her baby's back as she settled down, obviously tired from all the late-night activity.
You were always worried about that. You told me I was the only one who wasn't afraid of you.
At Kronberg? She nodded.
Yes. You were known for being pretty tough on people. Most of our colleagues were afraid of you because you wielded power pretty freely. I was the only one you were somewhat nice to.
We were friends? How did she want to explain their relationship? She'd thought about it on the flight from Munich.
Not exactly. I was attracted to you. I was pretty naive, and it was my first time out of the States, my first big job. I wanted to see something in you that might not have been there. I wanted to think I could change you, that you could care about me so much you would change your ways. Beauty and the Beast syndrome. I'm not naive anymore. I need you to understand that I'm here to see if you can help me, not to restart a relationship.
Yes, he said simply. She wasn't sure what he was assenting to.
Yes?
Yes, I'll help you, he said with a nod.
Of course I'll help you.
What do you need me to do? Have you been hiding from me? Am I why you walked out on your internship? Because I won't hurt you. I don't know what I said or did to make you feel that way, but it won't happen again. Never. I'll do anything I can to help you and Violet. He sounded so fervent she wanted to believe him, but she'd been burned too many times to not be suspicious.
Just like that? Shouldn't you ask for a DNA test?
What could he get out of this? He had to be playing some angle. I don't need one, he replied. You said she's mine. She feels like she's mine. Besides, even if she wasn't, I would still help you.
I don't understand.
He was quiet for a moment, his eyes on Violet. You show up and offer me some kind of a future. Some even murky link to a past I might never remember. I'm going to take it. It's like I managed to start this tiny fire, and now I need to nurture it. If I take care of it, I might have something warm in my life. She didn't want to think about how those words made her want to melt. She wasn't supposed to be this easy.
She was supposed to question everything this man said or did. I told you I'm not interested in a relationship. You aren't now. But I'm her father, and I'm going to help her and you. That means I'll be in your life as much as you'll allow me to be. And I don't intend to waste this chance. He wasn't listening to her. There is no chance. A ghost of a smile turned his lips up. I bet you always thought there was no chance that you would see me again. Things change. So do people. That was where he was wrong. Stephen Tucker, he corrected in a deep voice. My name is Tucker, and I'm not that bastard Reeser. I'm starting to wonder if I ever was. I've been letting the idea that I was some kind of monster eat me alive inside for months, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to live the life I have right now, and that includes you and our daughter. I wasn't asking you to be a part of her life. This was not going the way she'd thought it would, and his reaction was throwing her for a loop. Then what were you asking me for? Because, sweetheart, if it was cash, I'll give you everything I have, but it won't be much, he admitted. Oddly enough, guys who can't remember their real names or have any proof that they even exist don't make a ton of money. McKay Taggart pays us, but I haven't saved a ton. When MacDonald wiped my memory and turned me into her slave, she apparently took all my assets, too. Unless you know something I don't. Did I, own the place I lived in? Ever mention a big bank account maybe no one else knew about? Did I have a safe? He was being entirely frustrating. I wasn't going to blackmail you. I was going to ask you to help support her while I try to figure out if I can get my career back on track. That was all I was going to do. I want to get back into medicine if I can. It's a demanding profession, and I can't ask my mom to watch her all the time. She hoped once they got back to the States and found a new normal that her mother would want to get back into life again. It wasn't good for her to spend every waking hour living out her paranoia. He stepped up and put one big hand on Violet's back, a tender look coming over his face. I think I could be a good stay-at-home dad. All the kids treat me like a jungle gym. I'm also pretty much a big kid myself, not that I can't be responsible. And I bet Tag chipped me again. I cut out the last one because we were going into Kronberg and didn't want the CIA guys to be able to follow us. But if I know Tag, he probably put it in my butt, or somewhere it won't be easy to get to, so you'll always know exactly where I am. I'm sure he'll give you the code if you adopt me. What? Sorry, I was kidding about the adoption part, but Tag jokes about us being puppies a lot. I told you I didn't bring much of value to the table. Having a locator chip is one of the pluses, unless you think it's a negative and then I can cut it out. Wouldn't be the first, or even the second time, if I can find it. He frowned, but it only made him look adorable. Like Stephen had been when they were alone, when he let go of that ruthless will of his, and his smile came from somewhere deep inside, some well of sweetness in the man. What if the drugs that had been used on him had burned away all the hard parts of his personality, leaving him with all the sweetness and light? Was his dark side gone, or merely clinging to him like shadows, waiting to take over again? I should go inside. Standing out here with him was disconcerting. You should get some rest. But know that I'll do whatever you need me to do, Ronnie. I'll figure out how to get us the money we need. I can probably sell some plasma. Do you think the drugs fucked up my plasma? Shit, I said fuck. And shit. I probably shouldn't cuss around the baby. I'm going to shut up now. His hand came out, cupping the side of her face. Except to say this. I missed you, Veronica. I didn't know your name, but I missed you. She was tearing up, and she'd promised herself he wouldn't get to her. She took a step back. This was a mistake.
He stayed where he was, giving her space. Sorry. I won't touch you again if you don't want me to, but that felt right. I'm not supposed to think about my past. That can get me in trouble. So I've started following my instincts, and every instinct I have makes me want to get close to you, to be around you, to protect you.
I only need some help to get back on my feet.
He was infinitely more dangerous than he'd been before. Or maybe she wasn't as far from that naive girl she'd been as she'd thought. Maybe that dumb girl had been waiting for him to show up again and touch her like she was precious. The elevator doors opened, and a familiar woman stepped through. Rebecca Walsh hadn't aged a day. She was lovely, and still had a thing for cardigans. Her hands went to her hips as she took in the man in his hospital gown.
Owen texted me that we had a problem. Tucker, what about "you're not supposed to get out of bed, do you not understand"?
You know my memory is shit, Doc. I mean, it's bad. It's faulty, he said with a wince. I'm going to get better about the potty mouth thing. Rebecca turned her way and seemed to force a smile on her face.
Hello, Veronica. We didn't get to talk earlier. I'm glad you're okay. You disappeared off the face of the earth. And you left without saying goodbye.
Or warning her. She'd thought they were friends. Not the closest of friends, but at least friendly.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave everyone without an explanation, but things happened so quickly.
Rebecca's face fell.
I would like to explain that to you, but it's a long story.
I doped her up with a time dilation drug and scared the holy hell out of her, and she wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't, Tucker said. She freaked out and ran. A shiver went up her spine.
Okay, maybe not such a long story.
Rebecca stared at Tucker, considering him.
But now I'm not certain why you did it. Being around you the way I have has made me reconsider. I think you might have been trying to force me out of McDonald's team to save me.
Good. He'd tried to save Rebecca, but left her behind for Dr. McDonald. Now that she knew a bit more about the doctor's experiments, she had to wonder why she'd been spared. Had he thought about that when he'd left her there? Or had that been the day he'd been taken? Don't believe what they say, Ronnie. I'm not who they say. It's all for show. What had he meant? At the time, she'd thought he meant his outward asshole was in place to show everyone he was in charge. He was too young to be in his position, and he wasn't the first leader who overdid his boss persona. What if he'd meant something else? She'd recognized one of those men who'd stood near Tucker. Her eyes had lingered on him, but it wasn't until this moment she realized who he was. The dark-haired one. She needed to see him, to make sure her memory wasn't playing tricks on her. That last day had been playing in a loop through her head ever since the moment she'd realized Stephen was alive.
We should talk about all of this tomorrow, Rebecca was saying. Maybe we can have breakfast. I can fill you in on everything I know. I promise I won't hold anything back this time, Ronnie. For now, Tucker needs some rest, and I need to run a few more tests. I'm worried his cardiac event was connected to something I'm missing.
I want to put my daughter to bed, Tucker insisted. Then I'll let you do whatever you like, but I want to say goodnight to her and make sure she and Ronnie have everything they need.
Daughter?
Rebecca's eyes widened.
Oh my God. I didn't know. I thought you were playing with fire, but I didn't realize you'd actually slept with him.
Violet yawned, giving her mother the perfect excuse to get out of this conversation. She needed some distance, needed a night to think about what had truly happened. Stephen was back, and she didn't know how she felt. What if he hadn't meant to leave her that day? She'd believed Dr. McDonald, but McDonald was a liar and a criminal. What if he'd really had a job interview and McDonald had taken him into custody to protect her research?
Had that been why the dark-haired man had been at her side that day? Solo had said they needed her to put together those last days in Munich and Paris. She hadn't once considered that the reality she knew could be false. What if he'd meant everything he'd said to her? What if he'd kissed her and promised to come back to her and she'd listened to a woman she knew was evil? She hadn't even questioned MacDonald, hadn't tried to contact Stephen to confirm he was a jerk. She hadn't seen him again. According to everyone, he hadn't even gone back to Munich to clear out his apartment. He'd simply moved to Argentina. Who did that? Veronica, are you all right? Rebecca was looking at her. You went a little pale. Are you okay? Tucker was right back to her side. She's been through a lot today. You have too, Rebecca argued. You need to be careful until we're sure that drug Green gave you isn't still having an effect. The door to her room came open, and Solo strode out, Taggart hard on her heels. What do you mean someone's trying to break into your place? Taggart asked. Like right now? Solo pressed the button for the lift. I don't know. I only know my perimeter alarms went off, and I need to figure out what's going on. No one is supposed to know I'm here in London. I assume you didn't send someone to loot the place. Of course not. All my puppies are accounted for. I'll go with you. Taggart looked over at Tucker, pointing a finger his way. If you don't follow Dr. Walsh's orders, I'll let Owen trank you. He's been practicing. You've gotten to talk to your girl. She's not going anywhere. Get back to bed. Your daughter doesn't need to lose her father to a heart attack right after she's found him. Miss Croft, your mother is going to be a pain in my ass. Tell her someone will walk her through our security protocols in the morning. If you need anything, call Damon. Everyone, get to bed. We'll sort this out in the morning. The doors opened, and Solo stepped in. I'll be back tomorrow. Don't worry. You're safe here. What's going on? The dark-haired man from before walked up, and he was carrying clothes on hangers, a shirt and jeans, sneakers in his other hand. He was a spectacularly handsome man, but then MacDonald had surrounded herself with those. You were there. She was sure of it now. She rubbed Violet's back, the motion as much for her comfort as the baby's. You were MacDonald's bodyguard on the last day I saw Stephen. You showed up at his flat with her. You took his things, his laptop and tablet. The dark-haired man looked stunned. I did what? Robert? Tucker turned his way. God, she's right. You were there. I was there. I can remember everything was green and the sun was starting to come up. There was a grave. I had something to do. How did I know you? I knew you. She watched in horror as Tucker went white and fell to the floor. Chapter 4. Tucker paced, the early morning light illuminating the conference room. Was Veronica awake yet? He wasn't sure what he wanted. He wanted her to be able to rest, but he also wanted to see her. He hadn't stopped thinking about her all night. Even as the docs had run every test they could on him, his mind had been on his V's, Veronica and Violet. They were sweet and innocent, and he knew he should hold himself back. He wasn't innocent. He had blood on his hands. He'd done bad things. Things he couldn't even remember doing. He should help them, and then walk away. He wasn't going to do it. He was going to win her over, and before she figured out what was happening, he would be in her bed, sitting at her breakfast table, and taking their daughter to Daddy and Me classes. If her mom didn't murder him in his sleep. Also, if he didn't get arrested and thrown in jail. Minor problems. He'd gotten around far worse. You should sit down, Robert said from his chair. If one of the docs catches you walking around, you'll find yourself right back in bed. One coma, a minor heart attack, and a fainting episode, and suddenly he was an invalid. I'm fine. I just needed to eat.
According to Rebecca, hunger wasn't the problem, Rob pointed out. She thinks it's all tied to the way the drug worked on your brain. Your whole system goes haywire when you try to remember. He understood what Rebecca and Stephanie had been talking about. There was a chemical reaction in his brain that hadn't been there before. His neural pathways were attempting to heal themselves in a way no one understood. He was some kind of walking medical miracle. Or a time bomb that could explode at any moment. I can't not think about it. Veronica needs to know what happened. She's important, Rob. I get that, and I'll do anything I can to help you, he replied. I talked to Ariel last night. She wants to try hypnosis again. I know it didn't work the first time, but he didn't need a but. I'll do it. I'll try anything, man. He hadn't betrayed Ronnie. He knew it deep in his bones. There was something else here. Some truth that was waiting to be uncovered, and it would explain everything. I'll even let Rebecca stand right there with her paddles in hand in case my heart goes wonky again. You know Rebecca wasn't the one who shocked you. She wasn't there at the time. Veronica did it. At least, that's what Owen said. He told me she stepped right in and told Tag to get out of her way, and brought you back from the brink. He touched his chest. How close had he come? Would he be here if she hadn't decided to show up at exactly the right time? He couldn't see it as anything but the universe telling him she was important. She was a good doctor. He hated the fact that he didn't know how he knew that, but he let it go. He wasn't going to spend this day sick. He wanted to spend it getting to know his daughter. God, he had a daughter. I'm sure she was. Kronberg goes after the best, Robert said. She must have been great in her interviews. Technically, she didn't fit the profile they usually went with. What does that mean? Robert sat up, leaning his elbows on the big table. Jax has a fat stack of information on her. We've been studying her for months. I know. Everyone hoped she was the one who had the information we need. They'd headed to Munich because they believed Kronberg Pharmaceuticals had Dr. McDonald's records, specifically notes that would lead them to their true identities. But they'd also discovered that a list of every person in the medical, political, and military fields who had known and supported McDonald's research had existed at Kronberg. Tucker wanted that list. Tucker thought he might have had that list at one point. I find it interesting that of all the interns Kronberg ever hired, only Veronica came from a state school, Robert said. There's nothing wrong with state schools. When did you become a snob? It wasn't at all like Robert. And Veronica was smart. She might not be the wizard of the neuro world like Rebecca Walsh, but she had a good head on her shoulders, and she would be a great doctor someday. They would work well together. They could open a practice, and... He took a deep breath and let it go, but it was there. He hadn't been planning on leaving her. He'd been planning a life with her. What had happened to kill those plans? I'm not a snob, but the directors at Kronberg certainly were, Robert explained. Look through the dossiers of the other employees. Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, the Karolinska Institute, Cambridge. The list goes on. The University of Texas at Houston is not their typical hunting grounds when it comes to interns. As far as I can tell, she's the only state school intern in 20 years. He didn't like the sound of that. The door came open, and Ezra Fain walked in, his laptop in hand. He nodded Tucker's way. Good to see you up and about. How are you feeling? I read Rebecca's report. He'd read it too. He wasn't getting back in bed. Well, not unless Veronica went with him. I'm fine. I feel fine. Yeah, you'll feel fine right up to the point you die, Ezra said, sliding into his seat. You need to listen to the doctors. We've all been worried about you.
There were things they hadn't talked about. Well, he hadn't talked about. What did we do with Sasha? Sasha. Obnoxious, snarky, sometimes mean Sasha. But Sasha had been his brother, too. Robert's jaw tightened as he leaned back. We had him cremated. He's in a safe storage place right now. When we figure out who he was, I'll take his family the remains. No movement on that, he asked. He might have had a daughter out there. Until we figure out a place to start from, I don't know how we find his daughter, Ezra said with a sigh. Charlotte Taggart has connections in Russia. She's put out some feelers, but we don't know how old the kid would be. We don't know who the mother is. It's a needle in a big haystack. Don't think it's not on my mind. We owe Sasha. It's one more reason for us to find the key. The key being the other half of MacDonald's notes. The ones that had the actual names of her victims. Hope MacDonald had thought herself clever. She'd coded the files she'd kept with her, giving each subject a Latin name. They'd managed to match up a few of them via medical records. Robert was a subject she'd called ex novo, built from nothing. She'd erased Robert entirely and built him back up to be her soldier. Tucker rather thought he was the file titled Damnatio Memoriae. He'd looked the phrase up after they'd found the files. It referred to a practice in Roman times when an enemy would be stricken from all official records, all paintings and references to the person outlawed. It was a way to eradicate everything about a person. Like he'd been eradicated. It was something one would do to only the greatest of enemies. He kind of liked the idea that he'd been MacDonald's enemy. The doors came open again, and Tucker held his breath. And then let it go, because Solo walked through, followed by Ian and Damon, who seemed to be arguing. It was good to know some things never changed. I don't know that it's a good idea to let the CIA agent stay here, Damon said in his upper-crust British accent. Where do you want me to go? My house has been compromised. Solo's eyes went straight to her ex-husband. Did Tag bring you up to speed? Ezra was suddenly endlessly fascinated by whatever was on his laptop screen. I know someone breached your perimeters last night, and it sure as hell wasn't me. Are we sure it wasn't some guy trying to pick you up for a date? We all know you can forget your responsibilities. Maybe it was a fellow operative delivering the latest plans to fuck my life up. I don't need an operative for that. I can do it all on my own, Solo shot back. Yeah, it seems to be what you're best at. Ezra was looking at her now, a fire in his eyes like he hadn't expected she would fight back, and he was ready. How's your boyfriend? Levi Green is not my boyfriend. Solo bit off every word. He's not my friend. He's a man with information that can help my country. The last time I checked, it was your country, too. We serve our country in different ways, Ezra replied. Actually, I don't serve it at all since Green got me burned. I always thought it was Green. Now I wonder. Solo's eyes narrowed. You can't honestly believe I'm the one who got you fired. After that clusterfuck of an op in Mexico, I was the one who had to clean everything up. I worked overtime to make sure no one put a hit out on you. Or you set everything up, Ezra argued. Isn't that one of your plays? Set up a problem so you can solve it, and then the person you solved it for will forgive you for anything, because you're so kind to have helped him. She pointed her ex-husband's way. I have never done that. Tag groaned. Get a room and have hate sex, and don't come out until you either kill each other or fuck the other one out of your system. I'm too old for this shit. We don't know who was at Solo's last night, but I suspect whoever it was, he or she was a pro. Damon, I'm putting her up here so I can keep an eye on her. Also so she'll owe me. Solo laughed, a bitter sound. You already owe me more than you can repay, and you put me in the room next to the kitchen. Someone was playing K-pop and burning toast at 6 a.m. It's not much of a favor. You do understand that if we let her in, she'll steal the prize at the end of this, Ezra pointed out. It's what CIA operatives do. It's a class we all have to take. How to fuck over your friends 101. I wasn't fucking over anyone, Solo said with a long sigh. I did what I had to do. If you had killed Levi, they would have come after you, and honestly, he does know things we need to know. He's been working this a hell of a lot longer than I thought he was. He's been involved for years.
And yet you didn't see it, Tag accused. He was your colleague, but you didn't figure out he was working his own angle?
Knight snorted. I'm going to move a bit so the lightning doesn't strike me. Solo glared Tag's way. I have 2 words for you. Eli Nelson. Ezra snorted and covered his smile. Tucker felt his eyes go wide. Eli Nelson had been Big Tag's Levi Green. He'd been a collective agent who'd also worked for the CIA. Nelson had been the reason Tag left the agency. Ian's wife had been the reason Nelson likely still had body parts floating around the Arabian Sea. Tag turned a nice shade of pink and then sighed.
Fair. All right, Solo. You want to prove you're one of the good guys. What have you figured out about Green and his involvement?
Solo's face fell. Not a lot. He won't say much about it, except that he wants to cut a deal. He's been willing to talk about a lot, including the fact that several members of the agency and other intelligence units knew what MacDonald was doing before and after they closed the ranch. We all know there was a group within the agency that knew she was using soldiers to experiment on. He won't give me names.
He might not know them, Ezra said. Oh, I have no doubt he knows some of them, because he's likely been working for the fuckers. But he won't give them up. He gives them up and he loses his only safety. The people you're working for don't have an appetite for execution. He knows that.
Are we talking about the president? Tucker remembered that much. Solo was working for President Hayes, if the rumors were true. She looked to Ezra. Ezra rolled his eyes. Take her silence as a yes. We have to assume the president wants to clean house, but he needs help. He needs proof. If Levi thought it would help him, he would pass over a list of names.
It would help him.
Tag let his big body sink into the chair next to Ezra.
But only if it was backed up with proof. Hayes isn't going to let Levi make up a list of names.
I think I knew him. Tucker said the words, careful not to concentrate too hard about Green. In my head, I can see myself meeting him, but I think it was before. Or he worked with MacDonald, Knight said. We've been piecing together a timeline. I can place him in Europe shortly before MacDonald fled. The question is, what made her leave?
Kronberg got scared, Robert replied. According to the interviews we did in Munich, something happened that made Kronberg shut her project down. They wiped everything clean in the course of a night. Now we know they kept notes on her research and copies of their donors, but they aren't held on their campus, at least according to what Solo told us about the files we found.
The main thing I found on those files was the information that led me to Veronica, Solo explained. That tidbit had Tucker's attention. Why was Ronnie even on their radar? Robert leaned forward.
Yes, I'm interested in that too.
She doesn't fit their profile. I don't know, but they were watching her, she said. I know Veronica and her mother thought they were hiding, but Kronberg knew exactly where she was. There was surveillance footage, probably from an in-house PI. I think they're the ones who were crawling around my place last night.
They were smart enough to stay away from your cameras, Tag said. I'm worried we're dealing with more than an investigator. That's why I think we should either bring Solo in or ship her back to the States. Tell me something. Did you pay Green back for slapping the shit out of you in Munich?
Ezra's head came up. He did what? Oh, Tag was such a bastard. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was sure Solo had wanted that part left out of the official report. Ezra hadn't been in the room when Solo had confronted Levi after giving herself up to his mercenaries to buy them all some time. She'd spouted some sarcasm Levi's way, and Levi had reacted poorly. He'd slapped her hard enough to make her head snap back. It had been the first time Tucker had understood how evil the man could be. Apparently, Robert had told Tag everything that had happened. Tag was making sure Ezra knew, and letting Solo see exactly how he would react. He was meddling. Unfortunately, Tucker approved. Yeah, that was rough. I couldn't believe he smacked you like that. You were completely helpless. He did what? Ezra's voice was low, but there was no mistaking the menace there. Oh, he smacked the hell out of her. Robert threw in with them. Just bitch-slapped her hard. I was surprised you didn't notice the handprint on the side of her face that night. I'm betting she tried to keep it from him, Tag said. He fucking hit you? Physically? Ezra turned to his ex-wife. Well, I had said something about him having a tiny dick at the time, Solo mentioned. Tag's head shook, and he sat back. Ezra chuckled, but there wasn't a hint of humor to it. He stood and picked up his laptop. Well, you would know all about that. If you'll excuse me, I'll grab a cup of coffee and go down to help Jax. I would like a report of anything discussed here today. If you need me, you know where to find me. Solo looked up. Beck. He walked out without looking back. I'll lob you an easy one. And not only do you swing and miss, you kind of throw the bat in his face, Taggart said. Which is precisely why you should stay out of it, you meddling old man, Knight said under his breath. I didn't... Solo groaned. Levi wasn't my lover. He was my drunk mistake. How long do I pay for this? She shook her head. Nope. I'm not going there right now. Tucker, you said you remember meeting Levi, and Damon's intelligence places him in France before MacDonald left for Argentina. Didn't you find out that you took a trip to Paris around that time? I don't know. That's what Arthur Dwyer said. Arthur had been a colleague at Kronberg. Robert shook his head. No. He said he saw you at the airport. He didn't see you in Paris. But he saw me get on a plane with Veronica. This should be easy to clear up, Knight said, getting up and heading for the door. He opened it briefly. Please let Ms. Croft in when she gets here, he said to the receptionist before coming back to his seat. We've got other things to talk about. I'm hearing rumors that MI6 was upset that you're not sharing intel, Solo. I don't have intel to share, she replied. Look, I know you all think I have this sacred document, but it wasn't in the files the boys found when they raided Kronberg. The files you stole, Tag pointed out. Solo threw her hands up in obvious surrender. The files I stole because I'm the worst person on the face of the earth. She started to push her chair back. It's obvious I can't make any headway. Consider Veronica a gift. I'll leave you all be. Tag sighed and leaned toward her. Hey, I'm sorry. It pissed me off, but I do understand what you did. Ezra would have killed that son of a bitch, and then he would be in a world of hurt because the agency wouldn't have looked the other way. I'm worried that we're going to find some agency names on that list. Solo nodded and sat back. I am too. I'm worried that Levi's set up a system that protects him and fucks Beck over if anything happens to him. He told you that? Damon asked. Not in so many words, Solo said. The insane thing is I really have tortured him. I think the bastard likes it. Give me 5 minutes with him, Tag offered. You would be surprised what he can take and not talk, Solo said, and how reasonable he can sound. He's probably making a deal even as we speak. Anyway, you want to know what was on the intel we got from Kronberg. What I got was years of financial records and some sketchy business practices. I've got proof that Kronberg knew their erectile dysfunction meds could cause testicular cancer. But other than giving that to a reporter, I don't see how it helps us here. I want to talk to Levi Green. He knew Green had the answers. Solo seemed to consider it. We would have to go back to the States. I would like to get him in a room with Tucker and see if he slips up. And Robert. He seemed to know a whole lot about Robert's situation. I would definitely like to know if he has any information about my family, Robert said quietly. I've had my mind on other things, but I'm getting to the point where I need to know if what Emily said was true. Emily Seeger had explained that Robert had a mother and a brother, both of whom had died. Levi Green had dangled the tempting possibility that they were alive, and he knew where they were. Someone had done a damn fine job of wiping them off the face of the earth. Like they'd done with him. Damnatio memoriae. It was hard to believe someone hated him so much. The door came open, and his world seemed to come to life. Ronnie walked in wearing jeans and a green sweater that brought out the gold in her eyes. He immediately moved to hold a chair out for her. Hey, good morning. Did you sleep okay? She seemed almost startled to see him there. No, I slept terribly, but I'm fine. I want to get this done so we can all move on. He did too. Oh, he was absolutely certain she meant move on from him, but it wasn't going to go that way. Sit down and we can all talk. Can I get you some coffee? She stared for a moment and then seemed to find her voice. Sure. I could use some coffee. My mom is with Vi. Is that okay, or do you need to talk to her too? Mom didn't work at Kronberg. She came over to Germany when my sister died, and then we realized we were in danger, so she stayed. Oh, he had so many questions about that. He hadn't been given the dossier on her yet because he was too fragile to read or some shit. Sit. I'll take care of you. Now, what happened to your sister? I'm assuming this wasn't a natural death. He moved to the small buffet that the London crew always set out when they were having a planned conference. Teresa, who had been known to listen to some K-pop and usually had toast first thing in the morning, set out coffee, tea, and pastries for the morning meetings, and tea and sandwiches for the afternoon ones. He poured her a cup of coffee and added a bit of cream and 2 sugars. She liked it sweet. She would want the cream cheese Danish. She was murdered, Ronnie said. According to the reports, it was a fire, Taggart argued. She was working late at her office in the bottom of a very old building and there was a gas leak. The resulting fire killed 3 people, including Catherine Croft. She was a freelance journalist who specialized in investigative reporting. She particularly liked to catch corporations misbehaving. His stomach turned at the thought of what that must have been like for her. She'd been alone and pregnant at the time, and mourning. Had she mourned him, or merely hated him? I don't believe for a second that it was an accident, Mr. Taggart, she said as he placed the cup and plate in front of her. And why is that? Ian asked. Because an hour after my sister's building blew up, I received a message that if I ever talked about what I knew, they would do the same thing to me. Tucker's knees went weak, and he forced himself to sit. Bad had just gotten worse. The coffee was exactly how she liked it. Not too much cream, probably way too much sugar, and she would have fought over the Danish. You like it sweet, because you're sweet, sweetheart. She'd laughed at his goofiness, and then sobered quickly because they'd been walking to Kronberg when he'd said the words to her, and she hadn't been allowed to do what she'd wanted to. She'd wanted to kiss him before they split up for the day, before she spent long hours trying to ignore that something was wrong with the company she worked for. She remembered that she'd been surprised he knew how she liked her coffee, and that she was always disappointed because all the cheese danishes would be gone by the time the interns got a turn at breakfast. Could he really remember her, though MacDonald had done her best to wipe clean every semblance of his life? Why would she be the one thing that came through? Unless he was doing exactly what her mother accused him of. Lying, pretending, covering his own ass. She didn't want to believe it, but she rather thought that was her hormones talking, and not her brain. Because he was still the most beautiful man she'd ever seen, and she'd sat up all night remembering how he could make her feel. Beloved, desired, sexy as hell, wanted. Alone, empty, hollow. "That isn't in my notes," Taggart said with a frown, as though the worst thing that could happen was for his notes to be wrong. "I never heard you were sent some kind of warning." Or perhaps the man was simply used to the world obeying him. According to Solo, he was kind of the boss of everything here. "I didn't realize you had notes," she replied before sipping her coffee. Tucker had taken the seat next to her, and she didn't miss the look that had crossed his face when she'd talked about the message she'd received. He'd gone pale, and for a moment she worried he was going to have another fainting spell. But he'd sat down beside her, and his hand had come up on the table almost as though he would cover her hand. She'd moved slightly away from him, and he'd sat back. "Ian always has notes. He's always prepared," Tucker explained. "He doesn't often get caught off guard." "Oh, I can think of a couple of times I've been caught off guard and it cost us all." Tag turned to Solo. "I take it you knew all about this development?" "Only because I've already interviewed the Crofts," Solo replied. "I told you I'd found out a couple of incidents I thought we needed to investigate. The pieces of this particular puzzle don't seem to fit, but I think we need to look at them all again. We've missed something." She didn't like her sister being called a puzzle piece, but she understood the way an investigator's mind worked. Her sister would have said the same thing. Katie had been investigating Kronberg for a long time before she died. I didn't even realize she was working on a story about them until I got hired there. My sister was older than me, and she was pretty much wholly devoted to her career. I didn't talk to her often, and neither did Mom. When my mom mentioned she should look me up because I was in Germany, my sister got upset. Tucker frowned. "Your sister was investigating Kronberg before you got the job?" She nodded. This was one thing he wouldn't know even if he did remember his old life. She'd played Katie's job close to the vest. She almost never talked about what her sister did for a living. She'd been living in Europe for a couple of years at that point. She often got published by French and German news outlets. She was fluent in German. Mom was stationed at Ramstein for most of Katie's childhood. I spent a couple of years there, but she moved us to Texas when she left the army. Tucker looked at the man who'd been there the day he'd left her, the man who'd probably been with him as he'd left for Argentina. They shared a long look that made her wonder. What? They were obviously having a whole conversation made up of eyebrows rising and heads tilting. They had oddly similar gestures. The dark-haired man nodded to Tucker. "Rob thinks your internship might have been out of the norm for Kronberg," Tucker began. The door opened again, and Rebecca was followed by the gorgeous Scott, who Ronnie had learned the doctor had recently married. "I'm sorry I'm late," Rebecca said with a frown. "We're not late. They started without us." Owen held a chair out for his bride before sitting beside her. "We're a good 10 minutes early." "I was hoping to get to talk to Dr. Croft," Rebecca admitted. "Big Tag doesn't usually slide into his seat until 2 seconds before he's supposed to be here, and then he often sleeps with his eyes open." "Not when he's attempting to meddle in someone else's marriage," the British man with dark hair said. "Knight. Damon Knight. Then he's bright and early." You're welcome, married man. Tag shot his way. She got the feeling this group could devolve quite quickly if she let them. Why was my internship odd? What are you talking about? Rebecca asked. Something about my internship at Kronberg has set off alarm bells for Tucker and the other one, she said, looking to the man across from Tucker. Ron? Robert, he replied. I go by Robert, though I've been told my name is Russell Seeger. Something about the name sparked a curiosity. Memory was a funny thing. Even when one's hadn't been wiped, it could still play tricks on a person. I was told you remember seeing him, Taggart began. Robert, that is. You saw him in Paris? She shook her head. I'll talk about it after they tell me what it is about my internship that bugs them. Tucker's jaw tightened. He hadn't changed his tells. His jaw always formed that hard line when he didn't want to do what he was about to do. If you expect me to trust you at all, I need some honesty, she prompted. He turned her way, and she got the feeling this was another of those times when he would like to touch her, when all she had to do was reach out and he would take her hand in his. She couldn't do it. You aren't the usual candidate they look at, Tucker began. She was an excellent intern, Rebecca argued. Tag held out a hand. No one is saying she wasn't good. But Robert has been looking into Ms. Croft's background, and he and Tucker have spent the last year studying Kronberg and their practices. Let's not get sensitive. I'd like to hear them out. She sat up, bracing herself. I would as well. Robert mentioned that Kronberg could be a bit snobby when it came to their intern program. Tucker began, obviously picking his words carefully. I went to a state school. She could guess where this was going. Did they think she hadn't considered this? At the time, she thought she'd hit the lottery, but later on she'd known there had been a more sinister purpose to the invitation. Kronberg recruited me because they knew my sister was investigating them. They wanted to use me against her, or they hoped I could be a reasonable voice my sister would listen to. Did they approach you about your sister? Damon asked. She was mentioned in my last review, but it was more of a reminder that I signed a non-disclosure agreement, and I couldn't share information with her. It wasn't until after she died I thought they brought me in to keep an eye on me. I wasn't there for my talent. You were quite good, Rebecca insisted. Before my world exploded, I thought about looking you up to take a job at the Houseman Foundation with me. It doesn't matter if I was good enough or not.